Welcome back to this special edition of Today. I am live in Morwell and we'll begin with special coverage this half hour. Erin Patterson waking up a convicted triple murderer. The jury finding her guilty of deliberately serving her relatives beef Wellington laced with deadly death cap mushrooms. This is a live shot of the women's maximum security prison in Ravenhall, east of Melbourne, where the 50-year-old is locked inside after she was taken there from Morwell, where we are, late last night. Erin Patterson is the most infamous killer in Australia this morning, but there's still so much mystery around the mushroom cook. So who exactly is Erin Patterson? She's a mum of two, an estranged wife, and now a convicted triple murderer. 2 years ago, Erin Patterson was living a quiet life in the regional town of Leongatha, nearly 3 hours southeast of Melbourne. She didn't have a worry about money. She'd inherited $2 million when she was just 32. It meant she could be generous to her family, loaning more than $1 million to her husband's 3 siblings over the years. But in 2015, her marriage to Simon Patterson fell apart. The pair managed a civil relationship until 2022, when Simon says he formally declared their separation in his tax return. It set off a lethal chain of events. Erin demanded child support and the relationship collapsed. More than 7 months later, Erin invited Simon's relatives to lunch. She told them she had cancer, which was a lie. In a matter of days, 3 of the 4 guests would be dead. They'd been poisoned after eating a beef Wellington laced with death cap mushrooms. A jury has now found Erin guilty of murder. But the big question is, why did she do it? We'll likely never know. Indeed, the motivation is what everyone is asking still this morning. I mean, there is so much cruelty. It was so calculated, this murder. And there are so many people who still don't have the answers that they deserve, and least of all her victims' families, of course, who right now this morning are happy, no doubt, with this verdict, but are still unable to understand why she took their loved ones. We will have plenty more from Morwell shortly, but right now it is back to Jane in the studio with the rest of the day's news. Jane.
We begin this hour with special coverage. Erin Patterson is waking up a convicted triple murderer after a jury found she deliberately served her relatives beef Wellington laced with death cap mushrooms. Sarah joins us from Morwell. Sarah, good morning again.
Good morning to you, Carl. Yeah, Erin Patterson now behind bars at Dame Phyllis Frost Centre, where she could spend the rest of her life. We have team coverage for you this hour outside the prison and here in Morwell, where I join you from. But let's go first to Today Melbourne reporter Isabella Stashkovsky outside the prison in Ravenhall. Isa, good morning to you. She's being held there in maximum security.
She is, Sarah. Good morning again. The mother of 2 took that 2-hour journey from Morwell, where the court precinct is where you are this morning, to here at Ravenhall, back to the Dame Phyllis Frost Correctional Centre, where she now returns as a convicted triple murderer. Next, in early August, there will be a plea hearing. We're expecting then following that, there will be sentencing. So Justice Beale will hear from the prosecution and the defence. Those jurors, those 12 men and women, they have now done their job. After that, though, it's certainly not over yet. She could formally lodge an appeal, Sarah. There is a 28-day period where that can happen. So much is still played out, but so much still yet to come.
Yeah, that's for sure, Isa. Thank you. Well, for more, let's bring in Nine's Penelope Leish now, who was inside the court for that all-important verdict. Penny, good morning to you. Talk us through that moment.
Well, Sarah, we're inside the courtroom right near us here in Morwell yesterday afternoon. There was a great feeling of anticipation as everyone took their seats. It was packed with media and public, as well as homicide detectives, a lot of them in the room with us too. Erin Patterson came into the dock flanked by security guards. She spoke with her defence. She also spoke with a female friend. She said to her before she took her seat, "See you soon." Now, that's when we heard these verdicts starting to be read out by the jury. 4 women. They first came down for the attempted murder of Ian Wilkinson, guilty. Then Heather Wilkinson, guilty of her murder and guilty of the murders of Gail and Don Patterson. Throughout this process, Erin Patterson was looking at the jurors. She was continuing to blink shrink more and more as this happened. She seems to be trying to hold in any emotion, breathing deeply and just watching that jury really intently all the way up to when they left the room as the judge discharged them, thanking them for their exemplary conduct throughout this trial. Those 12 jurors, the people who sealed her fate after a 10-week trial. It was week 10, the first day into the 11th week, that they came back with this verdict just after the lunch break. Those 12 jurors, they've sat through more than 50 witnesses, including Erin Patterson being in that witness box over a number of days. They saw more than 100 exhibits, but ultimately they found that she's a liar. They couldn't believe her on the stand, and they found her guilty of these 3 counts of murder and that 1 count of attempted murder, finding she did have the intent to harm her estranged husband's in-laws and to kill them.
What an extraordinary moment, not just for this community, Penny, but of course for those victims' families who would have been waiting for yesterday's verdict and are no doubt heartbroken this morning. We will have all the analysis plus experts from the legal profession talking to us a bit later as well. Welcome back to this special edition of Today Live from Morwell, where Erin Patterson has been found guilty of murder. This morning, she's facing life behind bars after a jury found she did kill 3 relatives with a poisonous beef Wellington. For more on this, we are joined now by criminologist Dr. Xanthi Mallet. Dr. Xanthi, thanks so much for your time this morning. It took the jury about a week to come down with this verdict. Were you surprised by that outcome?
Morning, Sarah. Well, I learnt long ago never to try and predict what a jury is going to do, because you just never know. It really could have gone either way. But given the weight of evidence against Erin Patterson, I can't say that I was surprised, no.
We were speaking to our reporter, Penny Leish, who was in the courtroom when that verdict was read out. She said that Erin Patterson didn't flinch. What do you make of a reaction like that? I mean, it's a 10-week trial. This has been 2 years in the making, and to show no reaction for that outcome?
Well, if you remember when Erin Patterson gave evidence, I think she was very controlled, very measured, appropriate reactions, but there weren't any histrionics so I think the reaction from her, I think she was very locked down, but she tends to portray the emotions that she wants people to see. So that very calm, resolute Erin Patterson we saw yesterday was obviously what she wants the world to remember when she heard those charges handed down.
There was a lot of evidence, as you mentioned, during the 10 weeks. We heard her lying about having cancer, lying about foraging for mushrooms. The Justice did say in his charge not to consider her a liar because that's not what she's being tried for. But in the end, did the lies actually seal her fate?
Well, I think it was very difficult for the jury to put that aside. When she gave evidence, she did explain why she lied, but ultimately what the jury were asked to do was believe her account of what happened over and above all of the other 50 witnesses and the evidence that they heard. And clearly they didn't believe that she lacked intent and it was all a tragic mistake. So ultimately, although a liar doesn't make a murderer, I agree with the judge, but the jury were not convinced by her story and obviously found the Crown's case more compelling.
Well, she did seem to sort of change her story as well as the evidence was read out and as more of the trial, as it continued day after day. She also gave evidence, which is very unusual for somebody who's charged with murder during a trial.
Extremely unusual, but I wasn't surprised, again, getting a sense of who Erin Patterson is. I'm not surprised she wanted her day in court. She wanted to face those charges, to answer those questions. So yes, it is unusual. Most people retain the right to silence, which they absolutely have under the law. But I think in this case, this was her choice.
We still don't know, Xanthi, what her motivation was. Do you think we ever will?
Well, there's only one person that understands really what happened or why or what the possible motive would have been. Until there's maybe a psych evaluation prior to sentencing, I really don't think we're going to get any more sense of that. So unless Erin chooses to share, and remember at the moment, she's still maintaining that she didn't do this. So I doubt we're ever really going to know, but that is the $64,000 question. We all desperately want to know why somebody would be driven to these lengths. But sadly, I don't think we're going to be getting that answer anytime soon.
This case certainly, as you know, Xanthi, has absolutely gripped the nation and the world. So much was hanging on yesterday's verdict and all eyes were on this courtroom behind me. But at the end of the day, this was a murder trial, right? 3 people are now dead. There are children who are at the centre of this, 2 children whose mother is now behind bars in a maximum security prison. How difficult would this be for all the victims impacted?
Yeah, I really feel for the entire family. They sat through 10 weeks of the trial, and obviously, this has taken 2 years to get to trial in the first place. So, whenever something happens within a family, it's incredibly difficult. The level of trauma it really is difficult to comprehend. And as you say, we have two children that are caught up in this. We have Ian Wilkinson, who lost his wife and other family members, and ultimately was physically very unwell as a result of that lunch, and Simon Patterson too. So I do hope that now the public and media give the family the space they're going to need to try and process what has happened, the gravity of it, and hopefully move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is still weeks and months to play out yet. Xanthi, thanks so much for joining us this morning and for your insight.
Black tarps that were put up for privacy have been removed and all is quiet here at Erin Patterson's Leongatha home, the place where she served that murderous lunch that killed 3 of her in-laws and left Pastor Ian Wilkinson critically ill in 2023. This home and this community has been in the spotlight for more than 2 years as the grim reality of Patterson's crimes and the justice process played out. Today, a small number of parishioners gathered at Currumbara Baptist Church as the mother of 2 was sentenced in the Supreme Court. Moments later, a statement was placed on the notice board out the front saying justice is very important but doesn't bring back Heather, Don and Gail. It also says the community continues to pray for Erin, and now is time for people and communities to be given the peace and space to heal and move forward. We'll have full coverage of Erin Patterson's sentence and the reaction to it in 9 News at 4 and 6 p.m. Good afternoon. Police are hunting for a man after a Melbourne synagogue was set alight, one of 3 anti-Semitic attacks across the city last night. The Jewish community has accused the government of allowing religiously motivated violence to go unchecked. Mark Santomartino reports.
It officially hasn't been labelled an act of terror, but it is being investigated as a serious hate crime. That's according to Victoria Police, who are hunting this man this afternoon, who pulled out an accelerant from his duffel bag and set fire to the front of a synagogue here in the heart of Melbourne's CBD. About 20 people, including children, were inside at the time the fire started, but ultimately failed to take hold. It was the first and most confronting of 3 separate anti-Semitic attacks overnight that are being investigated across the city. At about 8:30 p.m, a group that split from an anti-police protest targeted diners at a Jewish restaurant called Miznon, chanting "Death, death to the IDF." Death, death to the IDF! Death, death to the IDF! They flipped tables, vandalised the restaurant itself and smashed a window.
It's beyond belief, and I just feel that it's un-Australian.
We are reaching a boiling point where the Jewish community no longer feels safe in the city. Not in their synagogues, not in restaurants, not in our streets.
8 hours later at Greensborough in the city's northeast, cars were sprayed with the Palestinian flag and others were torched outside Lovett Technologies, a business which manufactures parts for military planes.
I think those who tried to hide behind international conflicts to break the law in Victoria heed their head read.
Here we see the culmination of a government that's been sitting on their hands and doing absolutely nothing.
In a statement referring to the incidents here in the city, Victoria's Premier Jacinta Allen labelled it disgusting behaviour by a pack of cowards. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese adding that those responsible for these shocking acts should face the full force of the law.
The jury in Erin Patterson's triple murder trial is yet to reach a verdict following a 6th day of deliberations. Let's go live to court reporter Amber Johnston in Morwell. Amber, the process will continue next week.
It certainly will, Steph. We have been on edge all day today, waiting to see if today was finally going to be the day that verdict came through. But about an hour ago now, we received an email from the Supreme Court letting us know that the jurors have left for the day. So still no verdict after almost 30 hours of deliberations this week. It rounds out the longest week in the mushroom murder trial to date, with the jury forced to deliberate today on a Saturday, which is really quite unusual. Talking to the security security guards here. They say today is the first day in their careers they have been called in to work on weekends. This case continues to be unprecedented in so many ways. So in terms of what happens next, the jurors will have tomorrow off, but it won't be their usual Sunday at home with their friends and family. Because they have been sequestered, they will stay in that hotel accommodation under strict supervision with that complete media blackout. And then they'll be back here at 10:30 on Monday as the mushroom murder trial enters its 11th week. Can you believe it, Steph?
That's extraordinary. All right, Amber, thank you so much with the latest from Morwell. Parents have slammed a childcare centre in Melbourne's northeast for failing to notify the government an accused pedophile worked there. Let's go live to Isabel Quinlan. Izzy, an eagle-eyed parent made the discovery.
They did, Steph. They spotted an image that was posted on the communications portal of this childcare centre that's located in Greensborough, which was posted on December 5 last year. And it shows the accused pedophile Joshua Brown sitting next to this father's little girl. Now, obviously, you can understand the emotions that must have been going through these parents' minds when they made the discovery. Absolute upset and frustration, because they say the alarm should have been raised by police or centre management of that child care centre. So today they had to rush to get their little girl tested for sexually transmitted infections. So the centre, Steph, hasn't yet been included on the official list released by investigators. Police say they're continuing to work through material provided by centres right across the state to confirm the 26-year-old's employment history, but this father says it's not good enough.
What do you trust? Who do you trust? The parents, you know, they've known that information. They knew he's on their payroll, and yet they've kept it secret. For what reason?
Now, following the revelations earlier this week, one operator has already responded with a proposal to ban male staff from changing nappies at its 16 Victorian centres. But today, industry experts have warned against these knee-jerk reactions, Steph, saying changes need to be implemented at a national level to ensure that child safety measures are increased right across the industry.
OK, thank you, Izzy. A 19-year-old man has been arrested in Sydney's south and charged with 3 counts of assaulting police. Last night, 2 female officers were called to Bidwell for a mental health check after reports a 19-year-old man was lying in the middle of the road.
That male then stood up, started arguing with the police in a very short time frame. Allegedly, he punched a female officer and kicked the other female officer as well. She was unconscious for approximately 60 to 70 minutes. Physically, they're doing relatively okay considering what's occurred. However, psychologically, they're all shaken.
When the accused was being taken to hospital, he also allegedly bit a male officer on the arm. Well, Anthony Albanese has spruiked Australian independence in an increasingly uncertain US alliance as he honoured the anniversary of a former PM who established the close ties. Here's federal politics reporter Liz Daniels.
In uncertain global times, Australia today marking the anniversary of a wartime leader at the helm during our nation's darkest hours. The Perth home of John Curtin opened today, marking 80 years since he passed, a Prime Minister remembered famously as one who looked to America during World War II, and this afternoon the government honouring his Labor legacy as the father of the US alliance.
Took Australia into our present era of foreign policy where Australia would stand on our own 2 feet and make decisions in Australia's national interest, no one else's.
The Prime Minister is preparing to pay tribute to John Curtin with a speech tonight, spruiking Australia's determination to think and act for ourselves and pointing out he too has forged new security ties in our region and rebuilt relations with China. But the coalition continues to raise concerns over the state of US relations under Anthony Albanese.
We need the United States alliance to be working as strongly as possible and to ensure that Australia is getting the support from the United States that we deserve and that we need and that we have had under every other Prime Minister.
The Prime Minister yet to meet Donald Trump face-to-face, but he is on track for a 4th sit-down with Chinese President Xi Jinping.
Australian actor Julian McMahon has died aged 56. His wife, Kelly, confirmed his death in a statement, saying McMahon died peacefully this week after a private battle with cancer. He's best known for his starring role as Dr. Doom in Marvel's Fantastic Four movies, as well as several beloved soap opera characters throughout his career.
We saw her friend, Ali, who, as you said, has been there every day of that hearing, leave court a short time ago. Here's what the sound was, here's what she had to say or didn't say as she made her way through the media pack.
Ali, she said to you, see you soon. Were you hoping to see her?
I will. Was Erin confident that she would walk? Those tarps went up at her house.
Was she positive that she would walk, Frank? Ali, when you say you will see her again, do you believe she will appeal this verdict?
I'm her friend and I'll see her. I'll visit with her.
Was Erin confident that she would walk today? Did you think she was going to get out?
I don't know.
How do you think she was feeling in that moment?
I don't know.
Do you believe her that this was an accident?
That's not a question I can answer for you.
What do you think she would want to say to the families, to her extended family that have lost their lives?
If I could just get to my car, guys, that would be really good now. Thank you.
Come on, guys, enough now.
Thank you.
New South Wales police are combing through footage after pro-Palestinian and pro-Israeli groups clashed at Bondi Beach. Live to Today Sydney reporter Gabrielle Boyle. Gabby, have any arrests been made?
Not at this early stage, Jane. As you know, Bondi Beach is traditionally associated with beautiful blue skies and white sands, but it was ugly yesterday as hundreds of protesters turned out. We saw pro-Israel protesters come to counter-protest against a Gaza paddle-out that had been scheduled for just before midday. Hundreds of people clashing, certainly many ugly words thrown around and some punches as well. As you said, at this early stage, no charges have been laid. Let's hear from Minister Amanda Rishworth.
There's absolutely no place for hate and this type of physical violence. I don't think Australians want to see divisions and hate and violence from overseas imported here. Of course, it's a matter for New South Wales Police, but I think everyone has a responsibility to simmer down or to reduce tensions, but there's just no place for this type of violence.
New South Wales Police promising to closely analyse vision captured here throughout the afternoon. Jane?
Gabby, thank you.
Well, in a little over 2 hours, convicted triple murderer Erin Patterson will learn her fate in Victoria's Supreme Court. And for the first time in the court's history, the nation will have a front row seat as the historic decision is handed down. Let's bring in lawyer Ruth Parker live in Melbourne. Ruth, good morning to you. All eyes on the sentence, and it's live.
Yes, Carl, it's pretty extraordinary stuff, really. We've never had a case like this in Victoria, and I would say probably in Australia, but to have it broadcast live is really quite extraordinary.
It goes to show the interest, right? If sentenced to life without parole, Erin could become Australia's second longest serving female inmate. Will history be made today, in your view?
Look, one way or another, definitely. If she receives a non-parole period, it will be extraordinary. We are talking about 3 calculated, premeditated murders and 1 attempted murder. And really the battleground has always been, since she was convicted, whether or not she will receive a non-parole period. Obviously her lawyers were submitting that she should receive one. The prosecution have a different view, and so really it'll be up to Justice Beale what her sentence is.
Her defence is anticipating life in prison. Is it a question over whether she'll be granted parole or not?
Absolutely. There's no question that her head sentence, the total effective sentence, will be life. That is pretty standard for murder convictions, particularly after trial. But here we are talking about 3 murders of vulnerable people, which by virtue of the jury's verdict was calculated, premeditated, and very, very unpleasant, given that it was a poisoning. And so the battleground really is, will she ever have the opportunity to be released from prison, or will she stay in prison for the remainder of her natural life?
All right, she'll probably appeal regardless. We appreciate that, and everyone around Australia can watch all of that happen from 9:30 on 9. We'll bring you that live as it happens.
Let's begin with that historic first for Victoria's Supreme Court this morning, with a television camera allowed in the courtroom to broadcast live as mushroom murderer Erin Patterson is sentenced.
Let's go live to Today Melbourne reporter Christina Hearn. Chris, she could be sentenced to life without parole.
Carl, this sentencing is all about whether Erin Patterson will ever have a chance to walk free from jail. Now, if she's given no chance of parole, she will become the first Victorian woman for that to occur and only the second Australian woman. Justice Christopher Beale at 9:30 this morning here at Victoria's Supreme Court will deliver his sentence on a case that has captivated the country. A potentially historic sentence from the mushroom lunch turned triple murder.
I didn't do anything. I loved them and I'm devastated that they're gone.
In the small Victorian town of Morwell, a 9-week trial started in April after the mum of two pleaded not guilty to murdering Don and Gail Patterson and Heather Wilkinson and attempting to murder Ian Wilkinson.
The mother of two has always maintained she's done nothing wrong and says she's grieving too.
The victims died within 7 days of eating the beef Wellington, laced with death cap mushrooms. The defence attempted to argue the deaths were accidental. But on July 7, the jury returned from deliberations.
For the attempted murder charge for Pastor Ian Wilkinson, Erin Patterson is guilty. For the charge of murder for Heather Wilkinson, Erin Patterson is guilty. For the alleged murder of Gail Patterson, guilty. And finally, Brett, for the alleged murder of Donald Patterson, Erin Patterson is guilty of murder.
Now, while Erin Patterson will be here in court in person to learn her fate, the television camera will only be focused on Justice Christopher Beale. He has indicated he will do his sentence remarks for about 30 minutes, at the end of which he will deliver his sentence. How long Erin Patterson will spend behind bars. Carl.
Chris, thank you. It is good to have your company. Good morning, everyone. It's Monday, the 8th of September, and this is your news today. Coming up, we're live to Melbourne as Erin Patterson learns her fate while the world watches on. Plus, we'll show you extraordinary scenes at the US Open this morning as Donald Trump takes centre court. And forget crying over spilt milk. See the world record attempt that didn't quite go to plan.
Ooh, it was dangerous, wasn't it? Well, first up this morning, mushroom murderer Erin Patterson will be sentenced today at Victoria's Supreme Court. Let's go live to Today Melbourne reporter Christina Hearn. Chris, she could be sentenced to life without parole.
Yeah, that's right, Sarah. So this sentencing is not about whether Erin Patterson is going to receive life behind bars or not. Even her defence has agreed that that is an appropriate sentence for someone who has been convicted of killing 3 people. So this is all about whether Erin Patterson will ever walk free from jail. Now, if she's given no chance of parole, she'll become the first Victorian woman for that to occur, and only the second Australian woman since New South Wales abattoir worker Catherine Knight back in 2001. Now, her defence is arguing she should have a chance of parole because the tough conditions she's experiencing behind bars, because of her notoriety, she's basically in solitary confinement, which even the judge has questioned the humanity of that. But the prosecution is arguing that her offending is so cruel and so horrific, she should never have the chance to walk free from jail.
Chris, there's so much interest in this sentencing, and it's probably because of that. This is the first time a television camera can actually broadcast this sentencing live inside the courtroom.
Yeah, a historic moment here in Victoria, Sarah, because normally you even take a picture in there. I mean, that is illegal, but a television camera will be allowed in and this sentencing will be broadcast live. While Erin Patterson will be here in person to learn her fate, the camera will be locked on Justice Christopher Beale as he delivers his sentence. He's indicated it will go for about 30 minutes in his sentencing remarks, at the end of which, at his conclusion, he will reveal how long Erin Patterson will spend behind bars. Sarah.
We'll be watching. Thank you, Chris.
Next up this Monday, a plan to take down shark nets from Sydney beaches has been halted after a fatal attack on the northern beaches. Experienced surfer Mercury Salakis was killed by a large shark at Long Reef Beach near Dee Why on Saturday morning, where nets were only installed last week. Waverley, Northern Beaches and Central Coast Council say they will not abandon the trial. Police in Sydney haven't ruled out arrests after fiery scenes at Bondi Beach between pro-Palestine and pro-Israeli protesters. Let's go live to today's Sydney reporter, Gabrielle Boyle. Gabby, good morning to you. Got pretty ugly.
It certainly did. Heated protest scenes at a beach that we traditionally associate with that beautiful white sand and blue skies. Really ugly scenes at Bondi yesterday. It all kicked off around 11:30 as pro-Israel supporters came to counter-protest a Gaza paddle-out which had been scheduled for mid-morning. Punches were thrown and certainly very angry scenes. A large police presence here. Let's hear from some of the protesters.
Each of us have our hearts travelling with the Gaza flotilla
into this beautiful beach on a Sunday morning to bring the ancient hatreds from the Middle East here. And we just want to stand and say no.
Police tell us no arrests were made and no charges have been laid. Carl?
Gabby, thank you.
Detective leading Senior Constable Neil Thompson will be farewelled in a ceremony at the Victoria Police Academy in Glen Waverley today after he was shot and killed 2 weeks ago. Police are continuing to search for his accused killer, Desi Freeman. His son revealing this morning that he fears his dad was like Rambo and could survive without food for weeks. Now to some wild mobile phone footage which has captured the moment a man allegedly bit an officer during an arrest at the Royal Adelaide Show. It played out in front of hundreds of families after the man's partner was accused of assaulting police. Witnesses describing the incident as an explosion of fury.
Everything he had, he was trying to hit those cops. He even tried biting the cops the one time.
The pair was eventually escorted from the showgrounds and now face a string of charges.
US President Donald Trump says he's ready to ramp up sanctions against Russia after Ukraine was rocked by the largest aerial assault of the war.
Are you ready to move to the second phase of sanctions against Russia or punishing?
Let's go live to 9 Europe correspondent Jessica Millwood. Jess, this attack hit government buildings in Kyiv.
Government buildings hit in Ukraine's capital for the first time in this 3.5-year war. It wasn't just Kyiv that was struck by some 800 drones launched by Russia, but various other cities as well. Ukraine is accusing Russia of targeting civilian residential buildings. Dozens of people have been injured, 3 people killed, including a mother and her infant child. It was just last month that Donald Trump welcomed Vladimir Putin to have peace discussions in Alaska. Quite clearly, he's growing impatient, and now instead of peace, more sanctions are likely. Sarah?
Jess, thank you.
A drone strike fired at an airport in Israel's south, injuring 2 people, has now been claimed by Yemen's Houthi group. The attack targeted the arrivals hall and halted operations at the airport and in the airspace. This comes as Israel says it destroyed an underground route hundreds of metres long in northern Gaza as the government vows to push forward with its operation in Gaza City. Almost 900 people have been arrested after a demonstration against the ban on the Palestine Action Group in London over the weekend. The Metropolitan Police say 857 people were arrested under terrorism laws and 33 people for other offences, marking the largest mass arrest in the British capital in decades. The demonstration's organisers say protesters were peacefully defying the ban. Japan's Prime Minister has confirmed he will step down after a disastrous upper house election defeat. Shigeru Ishiba reportedly making the decision to avoid a divide within the party. The Liberal Democratic Party will today decide on holding an early leadership election.
The US President's appearance at the US Open has caused security headaches, delaying the start of play by more than half an hour. Let's go live to US correspondent Reid Butler. Reid, good morning to you. Is it fair to say that in terms of the crowd, it was about 30 all?
Yeah, it was a mixed reception, Carl. We had lots of boos, but also a lot of cheers as well. The US President is living it up in a luxury suite as a guest of Rolex. And you can decide for yourself, this was the moment he appeared on the big screen during the national anthem.
Was still
See that sly smile there as he hears the reaction. Broadcasters, the official broadcasters, were actually warned by organisers not to focus on any kind of negative response to the president in the crowd, but that is apparently standard practice, Carl.
Good on you, Reid. Thank you.
McLaren has sparked controversy at Monza, ordering Oscar Piastri to let Lando Norris through after botching the Brit's pit stop with a faulty wheel gun. The Aussie had jumped his teammate fair and square, but in an incredible act of sportsmanship, he surrendered second place.
But this is a bit like Hungary last year. We pitted in this order for team reasons. Please let Lando pass, then you're free to race.
I mean, we said that a slow pit stop was part of racing. So I don't really get what's changed here. But if we really want to do it, then I'll do it.
A tough pill to swallow for Piastri, who ended up third behind Max Verstappen and Norris, trimming his title lead down to 31 points.
I don't get it. Anyway, forget crying over spilt milk, Oscar. What about spilt beer? A German beer carrying record holder has attempted to outdo himself, carrying 31 beer mugs at once. Check out the big fella.
What is he doing? No.
Unfortunately, Oliver's dreams came crashing down, with only 17 making it past the finish line after a few hiccups. The Oktoberfest waiter holds the current world record of 29 mugs carried at once, weighing almost 70 kilos, which is still something to cheer about, I guess.
It's a lot of beer.
Oh, how good's Oktoberfest? Ja.
Danke.
Danke. Auf Wiedersehen.
That's all I've got.
Take a look at the weather across the country. Ich möchte einfach to say.
Oh,
a frontal
wow.
system will see storms and showers across Tassie, central Victoria and southeastern New South Wales.
Summer's day for Sydney with a top of 28 degrees. Wow, that is warm, while a cold front passes across Perth.
Hello and welcome to Nine's afternoon news. Developing at 4 p.m, justice served. Erin Patterson sentenced to life in prison, given 3 decades to digest the poisoning murders of 3 of her family members. Just ahead, her sole survivor speaking out for the first time, and why Justice Beale's decision has been described as appeal-proof. Another shark sighting shuts beaches days after a deadly attack, and new details on the predator that took a surfer's life. A father on the run with his children gunned down in New Zealand. Just ahead, the search now for his kids. Airlines on notice, new rights for travellers when flights are delayed or cancelled. Screen-obsessed parents missing out on their kids' lives. Hours scrolling adding up to years. Plus, Nico Hines free to play in week 1 of the finals after a surprise backflip from the NRL judiciary. And the pop princesses dominating at the MTV Video Music Awards.
This is 9 News with Deborah Knight.
Let's go first, though, to breaking news, where a plane has just made an emergency landing at Sydney Airport. It's British Airways Flight 16. It had taken off from Sydney to Singapore just after 3 p.m. today. It's a Boeing 787 Dreamliner, which carries between 250 and 500 passengers. It had issued a Mayday, an alert issued after takeoff. The flight was seen circling around Sydney. It was also dumping fuel. We are having reports in that the plane has just landed safely after issuing the Mayday alert. British Airways Flight 16, you can see the flight there landing at Sydney Airport just a few moments ago. We're still getting details through on what triggered the emergency and why the airline had to circle and dump fuel shortly after takeoff. Passengers are still on board the flight, but it had taken off on board heading over to Singapore, BA16, and it has now landed safely. We'll get more details for you throughout the course of the afternoon. Mushroom murderer Erin Patterson has been handed a life sentence with a non-parole period of 33 years for killing 3 of her relatives and trying to kill a 4th by poisoning them with death cap mushrooms. She won't be eligible for parole until 2056, when she will be 82 years old. Court reporter Amber Johnson has more.
Erin Patterson will become Victoria's longest-serving female inmate after she was sentenced to life behind bars with a non-parole period of 33 years, which means with time already served, she'll be in her 80s when she's eligible for release, and her children will be in their 40s. She appeared dishevelled and unsteady on her feet and showed no emotion as she learned her fate. Since that fateful Beef Wellington lunch in July 2023, she's played the victim and tried to outsmart the system, embarking on an elaborate cover-up to hide the murders of her in-laws Don and Gal Patterson and Gal's sister Heather Wilkinson. But in the end, it wasn't her words that mattered, it was the judge's. And here is what he had to say.
The total effective sentence is life imprisonment, and I fix a non-parole period of 33 years. Your failure to exhibit any remorse pours salt into all the victim's wounds. Your offending involved an enormous betrayal of trust. You inflicted untold suffering on your own children, whom you robbed of their beloved grandparents.
And even now, at this final moment, she gave nothing away. No guilt, no confession, as she sat there with her eyes closed. Her sole surviving lunch guest, Pastor Ian Wilkinson, was sat just metres away, and even in the face of pure evil, he found the strength to speak publicly for the first time.
I want to say thank you to the many people from across Australia and around the world who, through their prayers and messages of support, have encouraged us.
Erin Patterson was given a non-parole period because she's being kept in solitary confinement. She now has 28 days from today's date to formally lodge an appeal.
And we'll have more reaction to that sentencing after 4:30. It's been confirmed the shark that killed surfer Mercury Salakis at Dee Why was a great white shark around 3.5 metres in length. Massilia Eiley has more after 2 beaches were temporarily closed today when a great white shark was spotted.
Well, it's almost been 72 hours since that terrifying shark attack here at Dee Why, and the beach remains closed this afternoon. The hunt for that shark is continuing with surf life-saving drone and helicopter out this morning as guards on jet skis tried to keep swimmers out of the ocean.
We're conducting the operations using the UAV for the rest of today, relaying that intel to the council, to the authorities, to the Department of Primary Industries to support a collective decision there. At this stage, the beach will remain closed until the end of today.
It comes as the Department of Primary Industries has revealed new information that the species of the shark, saying it was a white shark, anywhere between 3.4 and 3.6 metres. They also revealed that the shark net at Dee Why is located 500 metres directly in front of the surf club, and their investigations show that Mercury was swimming 300 metres north of the club.
I still haven't processed it, so it's hard to put into words how long the shockwave is going to be. No one's going in the water. A lot of people that can surf are just not
The prosecution in the mushroom murder trial has asked Erin Patterson, are you making this up as you go along? The cook was accused of lying about vomiting after the fateful meal and denied she was using time between hospital visits to cover up her tracks. Court reporter Amber Johnston.
Erin Patterson blinked furiously as she challenged evidence from a number of witnesses, including her own son. The Crown prosecutor turning those claims back on the mother of two, accusing her of being the one who lied under affirmation. I suggest that what you have told the jury about only eating a quarter or a third of the beef Wellington are all lies. No, the 50-year-old insisted. And you're lying about throwing up or vomiting to try and account for why you didn't get seriously ill. I wish that was true, but it's not. The cook accused of lying about how much beef Wellington she ate. I suggest that you had in fact eaten a whole portion of your serve at the lunch. Disagree, Erin Patterson replied. You told Professor Stuart Half in an effort to explain to the medical authorities why your symptoms were not as serious. Incorrect. I don't agree that I ever said I only ate half. I didn't have a tape measure. She was then reminded of Ian Wilkinson's evidence when he told the jury the guests were served on 4 large grey plates and Patterson's was smaller and orange. Do you say that Ian Wilkinson has given incorrect evidence around the issue of plates? Yes, I do. You took the extra precaution of using a different, smaller plate to dish your non-poisoned serve. Incorrect, the cook replied. Patterson also challenged her estranged husband's evidence that she was worried about having an accident after the lunch while she was driving. I did not tell him I was afraid I'd poo my pants. No, she said. The mother of two then disputed her son's evidence, where he told police he didn't see her going to the toilet frequently the day after the lunch. I did, she maintained. Do you agree that you were not going to the toilet frequently on Sunday morning? I don't agree. At one point, Erin Patterson piped up and asked the Crown prosecutor to clarify a particular statement, which was very quickly and firmly shut down. I'm the person who asked the question, said Nanette Rogers SC. The accused killer was then asked to recall when she took herself to Leongatha Hospital and doctors told her they feared it was death cap poisoning. I suggest that you were shocked that the doctors were onto death caps so quickly and you were worried that you were going to get caught. Incorrect. The cook was then taken to the moment she discharged herself from hospital and went back home and had a lie down. Surely that's the last thing you do under these circumstances. It might be the last thing you do. I suggest that during this period of time you were trying to manage the situation you now found yourself in. Incorrect. Patterson was then reminded that she told the jury she had a booking at Enrich Clinic in September 2023 to inquire about gastric bypass surgery. The Enrich Clinic does not offer gastric bypass surgery or gastric sleeve surgery. I don't know. I'm a bit puzzled. In what way? It would have been related to weight loss surgery. Perhaps it was a different procedure I was doing with them. I was looking into liposuction as well.
Good afternoon and welcome to this special edition of Nine's Afternoon News. Erin Patterson is a convicted triple murderer, guilty of murdering 3 of the guests at that fateful mushroom lunch almost 2 years ago to the day, and guilty of the attempted murder of a 4th. The jury returning to a Morwell courtroom this afternoon after 7 days of deliberations to deliver their judgment. Amber Johnson has been following the case from day one. Amber, a huge moment when that verdict was read out.
Enormous, Brett. An absolutely history-making day here in Morwell. It's almost hard to believe that after all this time, mushroom cook Erin Patterson is now a convicted triple murderer and attempted murderer. You should have seen the scenes down here as soon as we received that notification from the Supreme Court, letting us know that the jury had reached its verdict. It really was quite extraordinary. Now learning that Erin Patterson has been found guilty on all counts. Now take a look at these photos, Brett. exclusive pictures now. This is Erin Patterson in the back of the prison van that were taken during the trial. We haven't been able to show them until this moment. Extraordinary photo. She looks incredibly startled. We haven't really seen her in this state at all. But you know what's really interesting? When those guilty verdicts were finally read out, we didn't see really any emotion from Erin Patterson, which is interesting because, as you might remember, she was really quite teary and emotional at times. You might remember even that really teary interview she did just after that lunch when she was maintaining her innocence. But when those guilty verdicts were read out, there were no tears. She was just blinking really furiously, and there was probably more emotion from her defence team, who just look absolutely defeated when that foreperson read out that Erin Patterson had been found guilty on all counts. So the jury finding that she did intend to kill her in-laws when she served them that beef Wellington lunch that was laced with death cap mushrooms on the 29th of July 2023. It has been extraordinary outside court with so much reaction. Take a listen here. This is Erin Patterson's defence barrister, Colin Mandy SC, moments after the verdict.
Are you expecting to appeal, Mr. Mandy? Are we appealing this verdict?
So no word there from Erin Patterson's defence barrister, but as mentioned, he looked absolutely defeated in the courtroom. Whereas for the Crown prosecutor, Nanette Rogers SC, and the rest of the prosecution team, it's a huge win for them, a police investigation that has spanned almost 2 years. But do you know what's really interesting, Brett? Pastor Ian Wilkinson, for example, he attended almost every single day of the trial, including when he was a star witness in the case, but no sight of him down here today. We haven't seen any members of the Wilkinson family, or even the Patterson family for that matter. Many of them did attend the trial every single day, which spanned 11 weeks, so a monster 11-week-long trial, but no one from the Patterson or Wilkinson families down here today to hear those verdicts. The only other person who was at the front of court was a friend of Erin Patterson. So really interestingly, Erin Patterson doesn't really have any family members left, but there is one loyal friend by the name of Ali who has stood by her side throughout this whole process. She also had nothing to say outside court, but inside court, as soon as those verdicts were read out, she said to Erin Patterson, "I'll see you very soon," Brett.
And just quickly, what happens from here?
It's a great question, Brett. So in terms of what happens now, Erin Patterson will be taken from the courthouse behind us here, very interestingly, actually in an underground tunnel which is connected to the Morwell police station, which is where she has been held throughout the entirety of the trial. We haven't been able to report that up until this point. So she's been kept inside the cells there at the Morwell police station. Next, she'll be bundled into a prison van and transported to Victoria's maximum security prison for women, which is the Dame Phyllis Frost Centre. So we expect that she'll be taken there this afternoon. And then what happens next in regards to the court hearings, we expect that in August there will be a plea hearing, and that is when we hear victim impact statements from people including Pastor Ian Wilkinson and also Simon Patterson about how these crimes have affected their lives. And then of course the proceedings will head towards sentence, with Erin Patterson now facing life behind bars after she was found guilty on all counts.
Amber Johnson, thank you. Crime reporter Gillian Lantouris has been following this case since the first guests became ill with mushroom poisoning and joins us now from Leongatha. Jill, what's been the reaction there today?
Absolutely. I think, Brett, it's a sigh of relief that this is finally over. I went to the church just a short time ago in Curramborough, where Ian Wilkinson is the pastor, and a member just said that she's relieved and they really want to rally around the family. They were watching the verdict live in the church there. I understand Ian wasn't there. He was with his family. But interestingly, they said that they do feel sorry for Erin as well. I mean, she was a member of their church, a member of that community for some time during the relationship with Simon Patterson. So I did think it was quite interesting. They said they feel sorry for her as opposed to saying they're angry with her or something like that. But the locals here in Leongatha, they are glad that, I guess, the media circus should die down soon. They really just want to remember and honour the people that have died. 3 people lost their lives, and of course Ian Wilkinson was pretty critically ill at that time. Brett, it's incredible to think that it's been 2 years since this deadly lunch happened in this home behind me. Of course, that just initially just brought up such a stir, so much interest in the case. We remember the time when the Inspector, Dean Thomas of the Homicide Squad, said that Erin Patterson is a suspect because she was the one who served those meals, and from there it just took off. But I'll just give you a little listen to what a neighbour of Erin's has said. When you heard the verdict of guilty, what did you think?
I was quite shocked. You know, it's been a long time for the kids and the families of the deceased and Erin having to wait in this time. But it's good that now they can just go on with their lives. A lot of my mates that are overseas and stuff are saying that they're seeing Leongatha on the news and interstate. So it's been a bit of a thing for the town to be on the map.
Brett, I'm at the home where this deadly lunch was served. It's now all tarped up. Of course, this was initially put up for privacy as supporters of Erin put these black tarps up for privacy, which gave an indication they really thought she would walk free and be able to go home to this house back here in Leongatha. But that is not the case. She is not an alleged killer. She is now guilty of triple murder. Brett.
Gillian Lantouris in Leongatha, thank you. Joining me now at the desk is criminal lawyer Justin Quill. You've been involved in a huge amount of criminal trials. Your thoughts on where this one sits in not only Victorian but Australian legal history?
Well, I can say this. Often is my role talking about criminal matters in the media. That's really my involvement in criminal trials. I often get asked, whether it be at dinner parties, at the football or even school drop-offs, I get asked about this case or that case. This case, the mushroom case, I've been asked about that more than any other case ever. I think it was the mystery in it that people were surprised about and had a view on. And everyone seemed to have a different view.
It did have shades of the Lindy Chamberlain trial where everyone had a view. In this case, though, you as a lawyer, you've noticed that there were quite a few unusual features of this case, even though it was a significant murder trial.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I guess one obvious one was that it wasn't an issue that she cooked up the mushroom pie that killed 3 people and nearly killed a 4th person. That's unusual. Usually someone will say, no, I didn't do it. Here she was saying, yes, I did it, but I didn't mean to do it. Another unusual case is that one of the victims, or now we know intended victims, survived and came to court to give evidence. If you wrote a script for a movie like that, people would say it's too unrealistic. But the most unusual aspect of it is that she gave evidence. And I understand why she did. I'm sure she considered it very carefully with her legal team. I think she had no choice but to give evidence because there were a lot of things that she needed to explain away. And she gave evidence and, as far as I could see, held up pretty well in that evidence. And I think it went very, very close, and 7 days of deliberations would say very close to creating reasonable doubts in the minds of the jurors. But that's unusual, a defendant giving evidence.
Because the prosecution had an enormous burden on their shoulders, as prosecutions do, which is to prove a case based on circumstantial evidence. And as the defence was saying, there's a hole in this jigsaw puzzle, and that is motive.
Motive, yeah. And I found motive really interesting. At the start of the case, Nanette Rogers effectively said to the jury, look, we don't need to prove motive, so we're not going to. Just put it out of your mind. I would have been nervous about doing that because it's hard. Jurors are only human, and it might be that they'd still wonder about it. I think I would have argued, look, if she's guilty of what we say she is, she's not thinking logically or rationally like you members of the jury might think, so don't try and apply your logical, rational brain to it. And I would have thought that was a better way rather than just don't think about it. But it was a difficult task to prove the guilt of Erin Patterson without being able to point their fingers easily to motive.
Now, she's been convicted by a jury of her peers. 12 people have come to a unanimous verdict, but that isn't the end of the court process. There's still sentencing to come. What factors come into play now? Yeah, well, look, we'll hear the sentencing hearing or the plea hearing will be heard in a few weeks' time, maybe a bit more than a month. And Justice Christopher Beale is the only person that matters now. The jury have gone home and they've done their service, and thanks very much from the public to them. So Justice Beale will hear from both defence and prosecution about the relevant factors. One thing that is going to be really interesting,
His Honour now proceeds on the basis that basically everything that Erin Patterson said in the witness box was a lie.
Right.
So it's the opposite of showing remorse. It's one thing for a defendant to sit silently in the dock like most defendants do and let their legal team test the evidence. That is their right, and that doesn't necessarily show a lack of remorse. But here, we had her doubling down, tripling down, quadrupling down, really, by giving evidence day after day. And now we know day after day lying. And His Honour will take that into account. And I think we can see, not just because it's a triple murder and an attempted murder, we can see because of those lies, she is going to get a very serious sentence.
And we don't know yet whether her team is likely to try and appeal this, but that is a possibility.
It's definitely a possibility, and I suspect, although, Brett, you and I don't know, I reckon they would. They've had 7 days to think. Obviously, not guilty took care of itself, so they would have had 7 days to think. If we hear the word guilty, what would our appeal grounds be? Because guilty wasn't going to change the appeal grounds. The appeal grounds will be found, if there are any, in the judge's charge and the conduct of the trial. And so they've had the ability over the last 7 days and a lot of time on their hands. They're up in Morwell. They couldn't come back from Morwell because they didn't know whether they were going to get 15 minutes notice or an hour and 15 minutes notice.
Exactly.
So they've been up in Morwell. I would be surprised if they haven't at least turned their minds to this and have a pretty fair idea. One thing I'd say is you normally expect Erin Patterson to appeal. But Erin Patterson hasn't done what we've expected all the way through, right from the interview out the front of her house to demanding that this trial occur in Morwell. Most of these sorts of trials would occur in Melbourne. She said, no, I want it heard in Moore. And then, of course, giving evidence. They're 3 examples of her not doing what we expect. So who knows, she might decide she doesn't want to appeal and she's just going to cop it.
We will wait to see. Justin Quill, thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Brett.
Got a lawyer there, Justin Quill.
Well, Erin Patterson has just become one of the longest-serving female inmates in Victorian history after she was sentenced to life behind bars with a non-parole period of 33 years, which means with time already served, she'll be in her 80s before she's eligible for release, and her children will be in their 40s. The triple murderer controlled the narrative for so long. She played the victim and dodged the truth, trying to outsmart the system. But in the end, it wasn't her words that mattered, it was the judges, and here's what he had to say.
I have no hesitation in finding that your offending falls into the worst category for the offences of murder and attempted murder. You engaged in an elaborate cover-up of your guilt. You inflicted untold suffering on your own children, whom you robbed of their beloved grandparents. Your failure to exhibit any remorse pours salt into all the victims' wounds.
Even in this final moment, Erin Patterson still gave nothing away. There was no emotion, no remorse and no confession. She just sat in the dock with her eyes closed. But remarkably, in the face of all of this evil, the sole surviving guest of the lunch, Pastor Ian Wilkinson, bravely gave a statement outside court. Here's what he had to say.
Thank you to the many people from across Australia and around the world who, through their prayers and messages of support, have encouraged us. I thank the people of the Leongatha and Currumbara communities in particular. Your thoughtfulness and care has been a great encouragement to us. That's all I wish to say for now. Please respect our privacy as we continue to grieve and heal.
Be sure to watch our 9 News bulletins at 4 and 6 o'clock tonight for more on this extraordinary day at court.
Welcome back. You were looking at live pictures there in Melbourne of a prison van being driven into the Victorian Supreme Court where mushroom cook killer Erin Patterson will be sentenced today. Our reporter Christine Ahern is there. Christine.
Well, Erin Patterson, as you just saw, has arrived here at the Victorian Supreme Court. Once again, there has been quite a bit of security. The Protective Service officers here just making sure everything is okay, and look at the amount of media that is here for the triple murderer to find out how long she will be behind prison. This is her sentencing, which will be happening in about half an hour's time. What is unusual for this, what is the first time here in Victoria, is that one of these camera crews is actually in court, a television crew being allowed in court for sentencing, which will happen in about half an hour. This will be broadcast live. We just saw a short time ago Ian Wilkinson arrive in court. Ian Wilkinson, of course, is the sole survivor of the deadly mushroom lunch. His wife of almost 40 years, Heather Wilkinson, did not survive. Either did Don and Gail Patterson. Erin Patterson will be sentenced for those 3 murders she has been convicted of, and of course the attempted murder of Ian Wilkinson. What is not in question is that she will receive a life sentence. What is in question is whether she will have any chance of parole. If she does not get parole, she will be the first Victorian woman to be sentenced to prison forever, and only the second Australian woman to receive such a sentence. But we will find out in about half an hour's time. Just give you a live look at the court again. Of course, everybody just trying to get a glimpse of Erin Patterson as she goes from the prison van into the Supreme Court. Justice Christopher Beale will then begin his sentencing at 9:30 this morning. He has indicated he will do his remarks for about 45 minutes. At the conclusion of that is when he will announce just how long Erin Patterson, the triple murderer, will spend behind bars. Jane?
Christine, we are just going to stay on these pictures for a moment longer because it appears as though Erin Patterson is about to exit that prison van anytime soon. But just given the huge throng of media that is there waiting outside the court to try and get a glimpse with her, just give us a sense of how much this trial has captured. Here we go. It looks like these are pictures now of Erin Patterson being led out of the prison van into the Victorian Supreme Court, where she will be sentenced in about half an hour's time. She's now in the courtroom, Christine. Just a sense of how this trial has captured the world.
Oh, Jane, the headlines that this court case has garnered has been huge. Here in Victoria, I've covered a lot of big court cases. There's only probably one that is comparable, and that is Cardinal George Pell, which had this kind of interest. Other than that, I mean, we have had, of course, international media here, documentary makers. There's been podcasts all the way through. Of course, everyone descended on the small Victorian town of Morwell for the trial, which ran for 10 weeks. But the sentencing has been decided to be here in Melbourne. But I mean, just look, Erin Patterson, she's in prison, but we still have all the media here just trying to get any shots that they can. Such is the interest here. And of course, that is why Justice Christopher Beale has decided to actually put this sentencing on live. This is a Victorian first. Of course, it's normally illegal even to take a picture inside court. So it was quite historic this morning to see a television crew actually go through those gates and set up to prepare to broadcast live. And of course, Jane, we will see that sentencing by Justice Christopher Beale live on Channel 9 and of course on our social media channels as well.
We will indeed. Christina Ahern there live at the court. Thank you very much.
But our top story, the doctor who first treated Erin Patterson has this morning shared new insight into their first interaction after she was found guilty of murdering her estranged relatives.
Dr. Chris Webster on the show earlier saying there was a suspicion as soon as the 50-year-old claimed very quickly that she got those mushrooms from Woolworths. Live now to 9 Melbourne reporter Isabel Quinlan, who's outside the jail in Ravenhall. Izzy, what more did he say?
Jane, he went into detail as to those interactions that he had with Erin Patterson when she first presented to hospital with gastro-like symptoms. He sort of described how she was quite cold and calculated and showed no emotion, particularly when her loved ones were pretty much sitting next to her, extremely ill. Here's some more of what he had to say about the moment she presented to hospital and why he raised the alarm with authorities.
Dandenong Hospital thinks that it's death cap mushroom poisoning. Where'd you get the mushrooms? And that's when she said Woolworths, and I'm like, yeah, okay, that's you're guilty. It's not pleasant to be around her. She's an odd person.
There are reports this morning that Patterson is expected to challenge her verdict after being found guilty of murder and attempted murder on Monday. Her legal team will have 28 days from when she is sentenced, Jane.
Izzy, thank you.
Well, killer cook Erin Patterson is reportedly set to appeal her triple murder conviction as she awaits sentencing in the case that has gripped the world. Former Chief Magistrate Nicholas Pappas joins us now to break down what is next. Nick, thanks for your time. Appreciate it as always. What do you think the grounds for an appeal might be?
Difficult to know. Obviously, the detail of the evidence would need analysis. There's a difficult ground called an unsafe and unsatisfactory verdict, which often has the Court of Appeal having to review the evidence to come to a conclusion that the jury couldn't possibly have reached their decision. But this was, as you know, a very long case with a lot of evidence, and so it's hard to know whether that ground has any possibilities. And the other thing that will be looked for will be any potential errors that might have been caused as a result of misdirection by the judge or rulings that were in error, things that we won't be able to speculate about or have any sense about.
You can't see any obvious holes at this point?
Sitting outside, as I have been with the rest of us, as you can tell, there's a lot of material that we didn't really understand until after the verdict, and bits of video and photos and all those things all come together in a circumstantial case, Carl, and that's often difficult to defend because each individual bit of evidence might not make the difference, but together, you know, it can create quite a compelling picture.
So this exclusive report from The Age this morning has revealed that the jury, the prosecutors and homicide investigators and a number of journalists also stayed at the same Morwell hotel.
Yes.
Could that assist with the defence's appeal?
Oh, look, it's so hard to tell. I would think not. There's no suggestion of any of the jurors speaking to anybody. Once it was discovered, it was solved. But it is, of course, all about appearances, and the idea is that we want to ensure that there's no suggestion whatsoever that there was any interference in the jury process. But looking at the report, at least, it was just a bad look, unfortunate, but dealt with very quickly, and I'll be surprised if anything is in it.
I watched with great interest Crown Prosecutor Nanette Rogers during the whole process. And just the quiet, efficient way she went about her business. An incredibly smart, very obviously experienced prosecutor, but brilliant.
Look, both counsel, I don't want to distinguish between them because they're both colleagues, obviously. I know them both very well. And each of them have done their job to the best of their ability. And it's interesting, you know, because what barristers do is not really about personal glory. It's about achieving a result, which is, and the result is not necessarily win or lose, it's about ensuring a fair trial. And certainly Nanette, very experienced Crown prosecutor, presented the case fairly, completely, as did, of course, Colin Mandy on behalf of his client.
Just unassuming. Interesting. Erin's legal team, on the other hand, can appeal against the sentence or the verdict. What's most likely?
Look, it's going to be a very significant sentence. It's hard for us to guess, obviously, because, again, we're not there and it's a judge's decision, but likely to be a very, very, very long sentence. She pleaded not guilty. She ran the trial. She ran it for a long time. I'd be surprised if there's no appeal.
And certainly no apology either, or no sign of remorse.
Well, one of the issues in the sentencing hearing that has to be heard first will be what factors are taken into account by the judge. Often, if someone pleads guilty, remorse is taken into account. Well, obviously, that's not a factor in this case.
What about the public interest and media attention and all this? Could that influence the process at all?
It won't influence the process from now on unless there's some suggestion that a media report somehow caused trouble in the course of the trial, which I don't know about. It certainly makes life more difficult for the parties because you've got to walk on tenterhooks during the running of the case, effectively. The Court of Appeal and the High Court, if it goes there, won't be influenced by the media. But if there's a retrial, that's when it becomes a very interesting question because imagine it having to go back before a jury after all of this publicity.
No. So with all this in mind, what do you think is going to happen?
Well, I think there'll be an appeal. I'm unable to really tell whether there's any proper grounds. What I can say, though, is it's going to take quite some time because at the moment, at least, she's yet to be sentenced and won't receive her sentence until, I would have thought, at least the end of August or even September, while the judge considers all the different important issues that he has to consider. Then there's 28 days to lodge the appeal and then the paperwork and so forth. I doubt there'd be an appeal this year.
Have you seen anything quite like this?
No. Certainly the glare of publicity has been extreme and I can't remember a case like it. You're probably better placed than I am to tell me, but I don't think there's been anything quite as intense as this. And just the facts. Just imagine a lady, 50 years old, with a family, who now, the jury has found, schemed and plotted and in a most chilling fashion, organised a death luncheon. It's incredible.
Really good to talk to you, Nicholas. Appreciate all of your time and insight today. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Well, he's the doctor who blew the whistle on a triple murderer. Chris Webster treated Erin Patterson after that fatal mushroom lunch, and this morning he says he knew she was guilty before she was even charged.
This was the worried phone call that he made to 000.
I have a concern regarding a patient that presented here earlier but has left the building. So the last name is Patterson, Patterson. First name? Erin.
Dr. Chris Webster joins us now live from Palm Cove to share his chilling experience. Good morning to you, Chris. Thank you so much for your time this morning. You were onto her right from the start. What was your first impression?
Good morning, Carl. My first impression when Erin Patterson arrived at 8 o'clock?
Yeah.
Is that the question? So everything was frantic at the time that Erin presented at 8 o'clock because Ian and Heather were still being treated and being prepared for transfer to Dandenong Hospital. So I answered the bell that indicated a patient was in the waiting room, and I pulled the door open and said, "Look, sorry, we're really busy. There's two very unwell patients," because the bell had been going for a while, a few minutes, and I said, why are you here in hospital? And Erin said, "I think I've got gastro," and then the sort of light bulb went off over my head, and I said, "Oh, well, what's your name?" She said, "Erin Patterson," and so I very quickly ushered her into the urgent care centre proper and said, "Look, Dandenong Hospital thinks that it's death cap mushroom poisoning. Where'd you get the mushrooms?" And that's when she said Woolworths, and I'm like, "Yeah, okay, you're guilty," because if she had said I foraged them and was quite sincere and quick in her response, then it's all a tragic mistake. But by answering Woolworths and not having any acknowledgement of the possibility of death caps in the meal, I knew from that moment, and I guess my instincts were right.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I guess the difference between instinct and actuality it can be a long way, or in your case, a very, very short distance. I guess a lot of this is hindsight too. How much do you put that down to?
Look, there's aspects to the case that I am privy to that help form the conclusion, and I was quite convinced from that Monday. I was convinced that, in fact, I was convinced when Dr. Beth, the Dandenong Hospital doctor, rang me at 7:30 in the morning to explain that they thought it was death cap mushroom poisoning.
So what did she seem like to you? Because I think part of the fascination that everyone has had with this case is just she seems like such an unlikely murderer. When you got to meet her in the situation that you met her in, how did she come across to you?
Impassive. She doesn't express emotion and exhibit body language to a level where it's possible to get a read on her. She is not sort of scary in the sense of menacing, physical, imposing, but she feels like she doesn't exist on the same sort of level of reality as most of us humans do. So there is an eerie sort of disquiet that you have in her presence, but it's not the typical sort of scary ogre type fear that you have. It's more visceral than that. It's sort of, her oddness gets under your skin and penetrates your brain, and just it's not pleasant to be around her. She's an odd person.
Look, you also treated Heather Wilkinson who later passed away. What did she say? Did you have much interaction with her?
Yeah, I had quite a lot of interaction with Heather Wilkinson, because when Ian and Heather Wilkinson first presented on the Sunday, I think they arrived roughly 11 a.m. to the hospital. I was in and out of the room talking to them throughout the day. The initial conversation I had with Ian and Heather would have been at least 30 minutes, possibly more. Heather and Ian were both quiet. They were unwell, but not distressed in the time that I initially assessed them. And Heather did most of the talking. They never talked over each other. They were mindful of each other when answering questions. And Heather, when directly asked, well, what did it taste like? She said that the beef Wellington meal was delicious.
So do you think they had...
Also...
Do you think they had any idea at the time that it could have been a deliberate act?
I think, yeah, there was some suspicion from very early on, and unfortunately the details of that I cannot go into today, but I can confirm that there was suspicion from an early point.
Is there what's the reason you can't tell us? Is it a legal issue?
That would be the judicial system of our Commonwealth of Australia.
Look, you understand that the interest in this has been like few things we've seen before. I mean, you're just a humble doctor from Leongatha as well, and you found yourself front and centre here. How has that sat with you?
This has had a massive impact on my life, and by extension my family and also my workplace. It's something that everybody is talking about, but there are times at my workplace where you have to be very careful talking about it, because one of my colleagues lost several of her friends. She's a member of the same church congregation, and these were people that were cherished in her life. So it's quite a range of banter that occurs in the tea room when the topic comes up. It was actually a bit of a relief when the trial started, because it gave permission for all of us to talk about it.
Can I ask, Doctor, why you are now being so public about your experience? I mean, you had to give evidence in court, but you don't have to do media interviews. Why have you decided to do that?
So I'm a part of a big story, a small cog in a complex machine, and because of the intense public interest and scrutiny, people are going to talk about my part of the story without me. So I'd prefer to tell my narrative in a way that is most accurate, and that would be directly from me.
Well, it's accurate and it's incredibly compelling. We appreciate you being on the show today, and sorry for the loss to that community collectively. Thanks for your time.
Ali, when you say you will see her again, do you believe she will appeal this verdict?
I'm her friend and I'll see her. I'll visit with her. That's
was Erin confident that she would walk today? Did you think she was going to get out?
I don't know.
How do you think she was feeling in that moment?
I don't know.
Do you
really
believe
don't
her
know.
that this was an accident?
No, that's not a question I can answer for you.
What do you think she would want to say to the families, to her extended family that have lost their lives?
Infamous mushroom killer Erin Patterson will soon meet her fate, with a Supreme Court judge handing down her sentence tomorrow.
And in an historic move, the sentencing will be broadcast live to the Australian public. For more, we are joined by President of the Victorian Bar, Justin Hanbury in Melbourne. Justin, thanks for your time this morning. Just how much time is Erin Patterson looking at?
Well, she's being sentenced for 3 murders and 1 attempted murder. And it's a relatively rare thing that somebody is sentenced for more than 1 murder at one particular time. It's an offence that has, for an individual charge, a maximum penalty of life imprisonment and a standard sentence of 25 years imprisonment. And obviously in these circumstances, we're dealing with a sentence after she has run a trial and been found guilty by a jury.
Context is important here. What have Erin's defence team said in regards to the sentence?
Well, after fighting the trial on behalf of their client, we then entered a new phase of this matter because the judge is going to be sentencing Erin Patterson based upon the finding of the jury, namely that despite her plea of not guilty, she's now been found guilty of those murders. And the representatives of Ms Patterson have adapted to that and have made submissions reflecting that new reality, and you can see from the plea hearing that occurred a couple of weeks ago that they were suggesting really the issue here is not whether or not she gets a sentence of life imprisonment or not, which was conceded by them as being the only appropriate sentence. It's a matter of whether she gets a non-parole period set, because it is a relatively rare thing in this state and indeed this country that somebody is sentenced to life without the possibility of parole at any time.
If she doesn't get the possibility of parole, Justin, is she likely to appeal the sentence?
Well, whether she appeals or not, that's a matter for her, but what you could say is that given she is somebody who has maintained her innocence throughout this trial, and she's then facing a sentence that doesn't give her any hope of release at any point in her life, one would think that the motivation to pursue an appeal would be fairly overwhelming.
The sentencing will be broadcast, as we said at the top, from the courtroom itself. Justice Beale made that happen. I mean, what does all this mean ahead of tomorrow?
I think it is a reflection of the fact that this trial has been extraordinary in the amount of public interest that it has generated, and I think quite rightly those involved in the court system understand that it's through these high-profile cases that most people get an understanding of and an experience of the way our justice system works. I think it's an important opportunity for the justice system to take up so people can actually see how our system works, can see the thought that goes into sentence, can see the care that goes into crafting the reasons, and that'll be reflected by there being a live stream of it tomorrow.
Justin Hanbury, thanks for your time this morning.
Did murder Amber Johnson?
Brett, any moment now we should be hearing those verdicts. We've just been told that the jury is back in the courtroom. I've just have my computer in front of me waiting for our colleague Penelope Lish to send through those verdicts, so just bear with me. I might take a few moments because I want to make sure that I get these correct, but I can let you know that the jury is back in the courtroom. No other family members in yet. Erin is staring straight ahead. She's in the room wearing a paisley top. Her hair is down as per usual. We know that the informant, Detective Stephen Eppingstall is in.
We've got the first verdicts now.
I can let you know, Brett, that for the attempted murder charge for Pastor Ian Wilkinson, Erin Patterson is guilty. For the charge of murder for Heather Wilkinson, Erin Patterson is guilty. For the alleged murder of Gal Patterson, guilty. And finally, Brett, we're just waiting for that last charge to come through. For the alleged murder of Donald Patterson, Erin Patterson is guilty of murder. So, Brett, we can confirm that Erin Patterson has been found guilty on all charges. So, Erin Patterson has been found guilty of the murders of Don and Gal Patterson and Heather Wilkinson, and guilty of the attempted murder of Pastor Ian Wilkinson. Brett, we've been told that Erin Patterson is breathing very deeply. She's been watching the jury now. She's been blinking a lot, which we've seen from Erin Patterson a lot throughout the course of the trial. But wow, what an extraordinary result, Brett, for a trial that has been anything but ordinary from the very, very beginning.
Well, there it is. Erin Patterson guilty on all charges. And I know over the past week, while the jury's been deliberating, there's been a huge amount of conjecture about which way they would go, whether they could even possibly even reach a verdict. And they clearly have, and it's unequivocal.
Erin Patterson, an accused triple murderer who sat silent listening for 5 weeks, today giving her side of the story. The mother of 2 has chosen to be one of the very few accused killers, to give evidence in her own murder trial. Did you intend to kill or cause really serious injury to Donald Patterson by serving that meal? No, I didn't. Did you intend to harm him in any way? No. Is that how you poisoned my parents? It's a straightforward question, Ms. Patterson.
After 8 days, Erin Patterson has now left the witness box here in Morwell. She's been asked questions about what the purpose of the lunch was, what her relationship was like with her in-laws and Ian and Heather Wilkinson. During some of her evidence, she's disputed some of the accounts of other witnesses. She's been questioned about what she told her guests about having cancer, about foraging for mushrooms, and what she did before, during and after the fatal meal at her home. We've been inside the courtroom watching as Erin Patterson answers these days' worth of questions. Here's a few key moments from what happened during Erin Patterson's evidence.
Erin Patterson, an accused triple murderer who sat silent listening for 5 weeks, today giving her side of the story. The surprise decision announced by her defence barrister late this afternoon as he told the jury the mother of 2 has chosen to be one of the very few accused killers to give evidence in her own murder trial.
Well, Erin Patterson has taken to the stand in her own defence. Amber Johnston, 9 News Court reporter, joins me now. Amber, when this was announced by her defence barrister, it was quite a moment in the courtroom, and the jury was then told they'd have a break before Erin Patterson then came back and she took to the stand.
Yeah, it's really been a bit of an emotional roller coaster at times. We've seen some tears from Erin Patterson at times when she's been talking about certain different topics.
Yeah, so when she was talking about the birth of her first child, she called that very traumatic, describing the emergency caesarean to have that child. She also appeared to be quite emotional at times when she was talking about health conditions that her other child had suffered, and she's told the court that she basically lost faith in the medical system, were her words, but she told the jury that she had been Googling, she'd been using Dr. Google, were her words, when she was concerned about different symptoms with her own health because she felt that she hadn't been listened to in the past.
So there was a quote from Erin Patterson where she said something along the lines of, I think, you know, in retrospect, I wasted a lot of not just my time, but I also wasted a lot of doctors' time because of my Dr. Googling. And then also her defence barrister asked her very directly if she has ever had ovarian cancer, to which she replied, no, I haven't. He also asked her if she's ever had a biopsy, a needle biopsy done on a lump on her elbow, and she said, no, I've never had a needle biopsy, which was another pretty big significant moment in the courtroom, wasn't it?
Yeah, and she's talked about the fact that there was family history of cancer in her family, and she was concerned about a lot of different symptoms at the time, but she was also taken with her barrister through the family relationships that she had with her husband Simon Patterson's family, and she told the court that it was her mother-in-law Gail Patterson who'd been a real support to her when her first child was born, that she'd been really gentle with her and really helped her at that time when she felt out of her depth. And in some more of the evidence that the court's heard, Erin Patterson says that Don and Gail Patterson were really involved, and that Ian and Heather Wilkinson, she mostly would see them at church, but Heather Wilkinson she felt would really reach out to her and include her in family occasions. But then we saw the defence barrister Colin Mandy SC talking to Erin Patterson around a really specific topic, Amber, and that is her love of mushrooms.
Yeah, so this was another really big moment in the courtroom where Erin Patterson ended up telling the jury that she has in fact picked wild mushrooms and even eaten wild mushrooms. From 5 a.m, the public lined up outside for a spot inside the court that has captivated a nation. It was standing room only as Erin Patterson rose in the witness box for a second day, the mother of 2 revealing she did in fact forage for mushrooms. Did you consume them? Her defence barrister asked. Yes, eventually I did. When I got to the point that I was confident in what they were, I cut a bit off one of the mushrooms, fried it up with some butter and ate it, and saw what happened. They tasted good and I didn't get sick. And then Colin Mandy SC ended up asking her, you know, what is it about exotic mushrooms that you like so much? And she said, it was just the taste. She feels like they taste a lot better. But also she went on to say that as she was getting more and more confident in identifying the mushrooms, that's when she started eating them, but she was also serving them to her children as well.
Yeah, so she noted it was around this 2020 COVID time lockdowns when she became interested in the foraging, that she and her children would see mushrooms on walks in the local botanic gardens and near a rail trail near her home, and that she'd begun picking mushrooms, and she gave this sort of anecdote about when she first ate one that she'd found on her property. Once she was confident that she could identify it, she said she'd been using Facebook groups and things to identify different species, but that she ate, there was field mushrooms and horse mushrooms, she said, on that property, and she talked about frying a bit of mushroom in butter, that it tasted good and that she didn't get sick. But she's also spoken about this meal itself.
Colin Mandy SC later asked about the fateful meal on July 29. Do you accept that there must have been death cap mushrooms in it, he asked. Yes, I do, said Erin. Do you remember where the mushrooms that went into that meal came from? The vast majority came from the local Woolworths in Leongatha, and there were some from the grocer in Melbourne, Erin told the court.
Yeah, now she couldn't remember exactly where this grocer was, but she talked about when she had bought these mushrooms. She thought it was the April of 2023, before the lunch in the July, and that she had opened them, she said, and they had a very pungent smell. So she said she'd put these mushrooms back into a Tupperware container, and that she'd eventually taken that Tupperware container from the home in Melbourne back to her home in Leongatha and put it into her pantry.
Yeah, and it sounded like she would quite often, even if she went out picking wild mushrooms, she would take those wild mushrooms home, she'd clean them up, and if she wasn't using them that day, she would slice them up, dry them and store them in this Tupperware container. But it sounded like these Tupperware containers, sometimes there were already mushrooms in these containers as she was adding new ones in.
Yeah, she mentioned that, as you said, if she wasn't using the mushrooms, she would store them, she thought, usually in a container, and she sort of said, I had a container going, and if I didn't, I'd add another one. And she was asked in her evidence about this specific container that had the mushrooms from what she called the Asian grocer in Melbourne, and she said at that time of around sort of May and June, that was in her pantry, but that also she had been dehydrating mushrooms and adding them to some sort of Tupperware container too. And Erin Patterson's also said through her evidence that she didn't pick mushrooms that were directly under oak trees, Amber, but she's noted that there were some oak trees in one of the gardens that she would forage in.
Yeah, it was the Currumbara Gardens from memory, and she said, yeah, so there weren't mushrooms from her recollection that were directly under the oak trees, but she said perhaps quite close to oak trees is where she might be picking some of these wild mushrooms.
And that's where the evidence has finished so far. So we're literally just about to go back into the courtroom. We've just seen Erin Patterson's defence barrister enter, and we'll bring you more of her evidence as she delivers it on the stand.
In his final moments with his client in the witness box, Colin Mandy got straight down to business. For the first time, he asked Erin Patterson the main question at the very core of this case. Did you intend to kill or cause really serious injury to Donald Patterson by serving that meal? No, I didn't. Did you intend to harm him in any way? No, the mother of two insisted. She was then asked the same question about Gail Patterson. No, the 50-year-old cried. And then again for her sister, Heather Wilkinson. No, I didn't. And finally, her husband, Ian. No. Erin Patterson was then taken to her record of interview with Detective Stephen Eppingstall, where she told him she didn't own a food dehydrator, the mother of two admitting that was a lie. I had disposed of it a few days earlier in the context of thinking that maybe the mushrooms that I'd foraged or the meal I'd prepared was responsible for making people sick. It was a stupid knee-jerk reaction to just dig deeper and keep lying. I was just scared, but I shouldn't have done it.
Now, Amber, we've seen more of this defence examination in chief with Erin Patterson inside the courtroom, and she has now said that initially she believed she was putting some dried mushrooms into the beef Wellington dish that had come from an Asian grocer, but she does now accept that there may have been some foraged mushrooms in that mixture that she used. She said she wasn't exactly sure, and it was in the days after this particular recipe had been made. She talked about in detail how she made this recipe tin eats beef Wellington recipe and how she'd changed that recipe slightly. And she says that it was in the days, though, after the lunch when she was in hospital that she had a conversation with her estranged husband, Simon Patterson, that she claims made her particularly think back to these mushrooms.
Yeah, so this was, at this point, everyone was incredibly sick in hospital. She was in hospital with her estranged husband, Simon, and their children. Their children had just left the room, and then that's when they, the pair ended up having a conversation about how Erin liked to dry mushrooms and she had a dehydrator. And then that's when Simon Patterson asked her straight out, "Is that what you used to poison my parents?" And that's when Erin Patterson told the court that she was like, "No, of course not." But then she also said to the jury that it made her reflect on all of the different times she'd used her food dehydrator, and she remembered that just a few weeks beforehand she had used the dehydrator to dry some wild mushrooms. So she became really quite worried that she was going to be blamed for her lunch guest being sick, and then by that point as well, Child Protection was also involved in the case in the sense that they were just offering the pair support in light of what was happening. But she ended up saying to the Child Protection officer that she was really quite worried about her security. She didn't want Simon to contact her, and she wanted to change her phone number as well.
Yeah, and Erin Patterson has said through her evidence that it was after this conversation with Simon Patterson that she panicked, and that when she was discharged from hospital on the 2nd, after she had been discharged from hospital, it was then on the 2nd of August that she took her dehydrator to the local tip, and that she got rid of that because she was so concerned about what may have happened with the mushrooms. She said she wasn't sure at that point that there were foraged mushrooms in this meal at all, but that she was panicking. And she mentioned it when she was talking about wanting to change her phone number, that she never actually did change that phone number, but she has said through her evidence that she did factory reset a phone that's known as phone B, that phone, she was concerned there were photos on that phone of the dehydrator and of mushrooms, and she was worried about detectives finding those. So she's admitted she did reset that phone for that reason. When asked about another phone, phone A, that the court has been told police never recovered, she told the court that was in her home during the first police search. That's her evidence, and that it remained there, but that she put it in a skip in September of 2023 before the next police search in the November. She said that she put it in with a number of other broken items, and that she would get a skip to clean out some areas of her home roughly around once a year. But Erin Patterson, Amber, she's been taken by her defence to some things that she told police in this record of interview that the jury has seen, the police interview, and she was asked about why she told police certain things about the dehydrator.
Yeah, so this was her record of interview with the lead informant, Detective Stephen Eppingstall, and in that record of interview, which took place on August 5, she ended up telling him that she didn't own a food dehydrator, and that's when her defence barrister asked her, was that a lie? And she basically conceded that yes, it was a stupid knee-jerk reaction, and she basically said that she shouldn't have done it, but again, she was just really worried that she was going to be blamed for these lunch guests being sick.
Now, Erin Patterson has denied throughout her evidence that she ever deliberately put death cap mushrooms into the meal, and she was taken by her defence through her intention around this meal in relation to all of the lunch guests. And Amber, I'll let you talk a little bit about that, but she got quite emotional at this point.
Yeah, so she basically started to talk about some of her weight and eating issues at this point, and she said that around this time she was thinking about having gastric bypass surgery, but she was really quite embarrassed and didn't want to be honest with her in-laws about the surgery she was wanting to get. So she told the jury that if she led them to believe that she needed some other sort of serious treatment that would help her with the logistics in terms of the kids if she was to have this surgery.
I had been fighting a never-ending battle of low self-esteem most of my adult life, Erin Patterson told the jury in a soft, quiet tone. And the further inroads I made into being middle-aged, the less I felt good about myself, put on my weight, could handle exercise less.
So she also told the court while she was being questioned by her defence barrister, Colin Mandy, that she, through a number of times in her life, had low self-esteem and that she had sort of been known, she says, to throw up food after she had eaten it. And she said that following this particular lunch, there was a part of an orange cake left over, around 2/3. She says she ate all of that orange cake, the sort of piece after piece after piece was her evidence, and that she then made herself sick after the lunch guests had left her home. But in the very final part of her being questioned in the examination in chief by her defence barrister, she was taken through each lunch guest by name and asked whether there was ever any intention to harm those people.
Yeah, so this was a pretty strong moment in the courtroom from her defence barrister, Colin Mandy, because he fired off a bunch of very strong questions that basically go to the very core of this case. He basically started off by asking her if she intended to kill Donald Patterson by serving that meal, to which she very quickly replied no. And then he also asked if she intended to harm Donald Patterson, and again she replied no. And he basically went through those exact same questions for every single lunch guest, and Erin Patterson every single time replied no.
Yeah, and we did see her, that's when she seems to become increasingly more choked up as she gave these no answers and no, I didn't, as she was answering these parts of the defence questioning. But that's all we've seen from the defence so far, and now it's over to the prosecution.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess Nanette Rogers has been sitting silently at the bar table waiting for this very moment, so soon she'll have her opportunity to put those questions to the accused killer.
After listening silently for 4 days, it was time for the Crown Prosecutor to launch her tirade of questions. You knew that they were death cap mushrooms that you'd been dehydrating, correct? No, I didn't know that. You were very keen to dispose of any evidence that might connect you with the possession of death cap mushrooms, correct? No, I didn't. That's why you rushed out after your release from Monash to dispose of it. No.
Erin Patterson was then shown a series of photos of mushrooms on a set of scales. The cook conceded they looked like scales she owned, and that's when the prosecution suggested that the mushrooms were death caps that she had foraged. Erin Patterson replied, "That is not correct."
She was then reminded about a post to the iNaturalist website 3 months before the lunch, where death cap mushrooms were found in the town of Lock. I'm going to suggest that you went to Lock that day to find death cap mushrooms. I disagree. I suggest that you were weighing these death cap mushrooms so you could calculate the weight required for the administration of a fatal dose for one person. Agree or disagree? Disagree. And the weight required for 5 fatal doses. I disagree. The accused killer was then asked about her habit of drying and crushing down mushrooms to hide in meals. I suggest that you were testing whether you could hide mushrooms into food without anyone noticing. Well, yes, in my children's food, without them noticing, yeah, that's fair.
Now, Amber, we're back to talk about some of the cross-examination that Erin Patterson has been undergoing inside the courtroom that's behind our cameraman at the moment. She's been up for a number of days, being cross-examined by Nanette Rogers SC. She came into the courtroom, jumped straight up for this cross-examination. She has a blue binder with her some of the time in the court that's got a lot of her notes, and she's taken Erin Patterson through so many different topics and back and forth during this evidence.
So many different topics, and the other thing to remember is that Nanette's had to sit silently at that bar table for days and days as Erin Patterson's barrister was asking the questions, and then now after all this time, this was her opportunity to jump up. So one of the first topics she kind of spoke about was the reason why she invited her in-laws over for lunch that day.
Yeah, and she spoke about with the accused why it was that she extended this invitation, not just to Don and Gail Patterson, her parents-in-law, but also to Heather Wilkinson and Ian Wilkinson, who's Gail's sister, and then her husband, who's a Baptist pastor in the Currumbara community as well. And Erin Patterson became quite emotional, particularly when she was talking about why she says she invited the Wilkinsons to her home.
It's probably one of the only moments where we've really seen Erin Patterson get quite teary during the cross-examination, and she was really quite emotional and upset as she was explaining why she invited Pastor Ian Wilkinson to the lunch, as well as his wife as well. She was basically saying that the couple had been really good to her over the years, and she wanted to, continue to build a relationship with them. So that's why she invited them over for the lunch.
Yeah, she said she wanted to thank them, particularly Heather Wilkinson. She noted that Heather, when her daughter was quite a bit younger and going to playgroup, that Heather often sat with her, and it was put to her by the prosecutor, how old was your daughter at that time? And she said 3 or 4. And when the prosecutor asked, well, how old was your daughter at the time of the lunch? She said 9. But Erin Patterson said that didn't matter, that she was still very grateful. And she said she didn't feel she needed a reason to invite Don and Gail, that they would come because they loved her.
Yes, exactly right. But she also said in the cross-examination, well, she conceded that it wasn't often that she'd be inviting people over for lunch. So she said that wasn't something that was happening all the time anyway.
Yeah, and she said that Ian and Heather, at least certainly together, hadn't been over to her house before and not for lunch. But she's spoken about that she'd had this other lunch with Don and Gail about a month before this particular lunch at her home. And she wanted to keep building those family connections, she said. But she was also taken through some of the evidence of Ian Wilkinson, and she's disputed some of that in what Erin Patterson says happened at that lunch regarding whether or not she'd been diagnosed with cancer.
So Erin Patterson at a number of times through cross-examination challenged Ian Wilkinson's evidence. So you might remember when he was in the witness box, he basically said that at the end of the lunch, Erin Patterson announced to the table that she had a cancer diagnosis, but this is something that she disputed, right, during cross-examination.
As Ian Wilkinson sat in the public gallery next to Victoria's lead homicide detective, Patterson challenged the pastor's evidence from earlier in the trial. Ian Wilkinson said in his evidence that you had cancer. Did you tell the lunch guests that you had cancer? I did not. Did you ask the lunch guests for advice about whether or not to tell the kids about this threat to your life? No.
She also was asked about the plates that this meal was served on.
She was. So you might remember Ian Wilkinson in his evidence, he recalled the meal being served on 4 large grey plates. So that's what the guests had their beef Wellington served on. And he, in his evidence, said that Erin Patterson, her meal was served on a much smaller tan, orangey sort of coloured plate. But then that's something that Erin Patterson also basically disputed in the cross-examination. So she said that she owned lots of different coloured plates, but she also maintained that she doesn't own any grey plates at all.
Yeah, and she said in her words, it was put to her by the prosecutor, did you serve a non-poisoned meal on a different plate? And she said no, she completely denied that allegation. And from there, she's also been taken through the way that she prepared this meal. She said that she did buy a dehydrator. She's spoken about using this Recipe Tin Eats book, and she's been asked by the prosecution, did you buy this dehydrator 2 hours after travelling to the Gippsland town of Lock? And whether she had seen a post on a science website, iNaturalist, about death cap mushrooms growing in that area.
Yeah, so the prosecution alleges that after a retired pharmacist made a post to the iNaturalist website basically citing death caps, that Erin Patterson allegedly travelled to that particular site and then stayed in the area for about an hour, and then 2 hours after that she ended up purchasing the food dehydrator from Leongatha. But she denied all of those allegations, but did concede that she did in fact buy the food dehydrator that day, but that is it.
Yeah, she says she bought that food dehydrator to dehydrate mushrooms, yes, but also to preserve other different foods. She's denied that she's ever sought out death cap mushrooms either in Outram or Lock, these Gippsland towns that have been mentioned. And when she was asked about iNaturalist more generally and other posts about death cap mushrooms as part of the cross-examination, she said she couldn't remember going to that site at all.
Yeah, absolutely. She, every time that she was asked about the iNaturalist website, I think her response was like, I don't know, I don't remember, along those lines. But the other interesting thing she was asked about was the ingredients for the beef Wellington. So the prosecution put to her that if she wanted to find the one single piece of steak as the recipe called for, she could have done that, but she sought out the individual pieces of steak to make the individual beef Wellingtons because she allegedly wanted to include the death caps in her lunch guest meals, but not her own. And again, this was an allegation that Erin Patterson denied.
Yeah, she says that she couldn't find a big enough piece of steak at the local Woolworths, and she disputed that she was deliberately looking to change this recipe to make them individual meals instead. Now, as part of that, she was also asked, as another part part of the cross-examination around Simon Patterson, her estranged husband. Now, he sent her a text message before this lunch saying that he wouldn't be attending with his family members, and she was asked around whether she had made this extra beef Wellington, a 6th beef Wellington, in the hope that he would arrive at the lunch.
So, yeah, we heard that she did make that 6 individual beef Wellington, and she said that if Simon Patterson did end up attending the lunch, she would have given him that beef Wellington, but she said that she absolutely did not include death cap mushrooms in that beef Wellington at all.
Yeah, she said she intentionally would never have given him or the guests death cap mushrooms in this meal, but she spoke about as well that some of the leftovers of this meal, she says, ended up in a bin outside her home. The court's been told that they were then collected by a police officer and taken to the local hospital and then through the health system for testing for death cap mushrooms. Now, she told the court that what was in that bin was pastry and mushrooms that she had scraped off a piece of meat left over from the lunch to feed to her children, and the prosecution alleged that she didn't actually feed them the leftovers from this lunch, but she says no, that she did give them those particular leftovers.
The prosecution made another point as well, that by the Sunday, Erin Patterson would have known that Don and Gail Patterson were sick after that meal, and that's when the prosecution ended up asking her, well, okay, if you insist that you did feed your children those leftovers, if you knew that your in-laws were sick after the lunch and you were also experiencing symptoms yourself, then why did you then proceed to feed your children those leftovers?
Yeah, Erin Patterson maintains that she initially thought she had gastro symptoms, and this is where she has questioned and said that she disputes parts of the medical evidence that's come from different witnesses. She disputed that she had told one of them that she thought she had food poisoning after this lunch, that she says she thought they were gastro symptoms, and she has insisted throughout her cross-examination that she was sick. She disputed any allegation by the prosecution that she had been pretending that she had symptoms or that she'd been specifically talking about symptoms so that it didn't look suspicious, was the prosecution's words, that she wasn't as sick as her lunch guests. But she said that's not the case, that she was actually ill.
Yeah, she always maintained that she was experiencing those gastro-like symptoms after eating the meal. But the other interesting thing that the prosecution brought up was the comment about Erin Patterson having 2 faces, which was quite a strong moment in the courtroom, wasn't it?
Yeah, so Erin Patterson has been asked by the prosecution, we put to you that you had 2 faces, a public face and a private face, when it came to your particular relationship with your in-laws. Now, she has said that that's not the case, that she did have a good relationship with Don and Gail Patterson, but as part of this, she was taken to a lot of Facebook messages. The court's been told there was around 600 pages in the December period of 2022 where she was talking with her online friends, and in those she spoke a lot about her in-laws, and they were quite expletive laden.
Yeah. So there was a lot of, in these Facebook messages, a lot of swear words. She referenced basically her in-laws' communication style as weasel words. You might remember one of the comments about Simon Patterson, he was referenced as being a bit of a deadbeat. But she always maintained that she loved her in-laws, and she was basically just venting to her Facebook friends.
Yeah, she's maintained that the whole way through, that they had a good relationship, that she loved them, and that's why she wanted them to come to her home for this lunch. And that's where the cross-examination has got up to after a number of days, Amber. We'll wait and see how much longer Erin Patterson remains on the stand.
In her final moments with the accused killer, the Crown prosecutor launched a series of rapid-fire questions that go to the crux of her case. Nanette Rogers SC suggesting Erin Patterson deliberately sourced death cap mushrooms and served them to her estranged husband's family, fully intending to kill them. Allegations the cook forcefully denied, as she also disputed statements given by her own children. They told police the Sunday after the lunch their mum prepared a meal but ate very little. Patterson's 9-year-old daughter also told officers they all ate the same dish. Are you saying that your daughter is wrong about what you prepared for dinner on the Sunday night? She is. Are you saying that your son is incorrect about what you prepared for dinner on the Sunday? Yes. She was then reminded that she told the jury her estranged husband Simon asked very bluntly if she used a dehydrator to poison his parents. I suggest that this is another lie told by you to try and explain why just the very next day you went out to dispose of the dehydrator. Disagree, Patterson insisted. The prosecution then accused the 50-year-old of hiding her mobile phone from police as they raided her home, suggesting she switched SIM cards and handed a different device to officers. I suggest you did that because you knew there was no data on this phone. No, I did it because they asked for my phone and I gave it to them. Patterson then conceded she did 3 factory resets on the phone she handed to police, but denied it was to conceal the true contents and deceive investigators.
Erin Patterson didn't show a whole lot of emotion as she was being cross-examined by the prosecution. But as soon as it was over to her defence team, she broke down crying, particularly when she was asked about her children. Her defence barrister circled back to a comment made by the prosecution that the Enrich Clinic in Melbourne doesn't offer gastric band surgery. Patterson agreed she mistakenly believed it offered the procedure when she made an appointment and clarified she was also looking into liposuction, a service the defence told the jury the clinic did offer.
At the end of his re-examination, Erin Patterson's barrister confirmed the defence has closed their case. The jury were then sent away for a long weekend. When they return, they'll be ready to hear the final submissions from both sides, the closing arguments from the prosecution and the defence. We'll bring you more when that happens, but until then, you can stay up to date on 9 News and here on 9 Now, and to hear the evidence in detail as the jury heard it, listen to the Mushroom Trial Say Grace, out wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Brett, there is so much happening behind us here. You can see the huge contingent of media that are down here. As we were talking about before, it's not just members of the Australian media, but also documentary filmmakers. It has been remarkable. We're joined here now by our colleague Penelope Lee. She was inside the courtroom when those verdicts were handed down. Penny, talk us through, how did Erin Patterson react when that moment finally happened?
Well, as we came into the courtroom, Erin Patterson was brought into the dock, flanked by 2 security personnel. She spoke with her defence team briefly. She also spoke with a supporter of hers, a female friend who has been here throughout the trial. And as that friend went to sit down, I saw the friend wiping away tears, and Erin Patterson said to her, "See you soon." Now, that's obviously not what has happened with these particular verdicts being handed down. As the verdicts were handed down, Erin Patterson initially, she just stared straight ahead, Amber. She was blinking a lot. That continued to sort of build as we heard the first verdict, the second, the third, the fourth. And during those later verdicts, her eyes were really fixed on this 12-person jury who have decided her fate. She continued to watch them as they walked out of the room and then just stared straight ahead, blinking, looking at her the whole time. She did look my way and other members of the media, as she sometimes has throughout this trial, really eyeballing some of us. She did that again. I can't say she was crying, but she was certainly blinking quite a lot as happened, with a fairly, I suppose, neutral expression on her face, downward turned mouth, but she appeared to be breathing quite deeply and trying to sort of keep her emotions in check as this happened.
Another interesting observation, Penny, is that throughout the course of the trial, of course, we've seen Pastor Ian Wilkinson down here almost every single day with his children. Also, a number of members of the Patterson family as well. They attended pretty much every single day of the trial, but no sight of them today. Were there any other families inside that courtroom? No, there was no family members that I recognised inside the courtroom today. It was very full. There was a big line of media and public waiting to get into this court. Not all of them made it inside. I was one of the lucky ones to be in there, really. There were about 4 homicide detectives in there, including the informant, Stephen Eppingstall, who we've heard from a lot throughout this trial. There was that female friend, the supporter of Erin Patterson, but we did not see any other family members. There, Penny. Okay, so this is Erin Patterson's friend, Ali. So this has been Erin Patterson's sole supporter throughout all of this. So Erin Patterson doesn't really have any family left, really. A lot of them have passed away, but this one loyal friend, Ali, has attended court every single day. We can tell you now that quite often when the jury wasn't in the room, Ali would go up to the dock and she would go up and share a few words with Erin Patterson. They would share in short conversation, and as Penny just told us before, as soon as those verdicts were handed down, Ali went up to Erin Patterson and told her, "I will see you very soon." So remarkable to see. Like, I remember at the time when we were covering this trial, Erin Patterson was always described as being quite aloof and quite a loner, but even in the midst of all this, she still has one loyal friend who has stood by her side despite those murder allegations, and now she has just left court knowing that her friend who she supported throughout all of this is a triple murderer. Brett?
Well, the sole survivor of the deadly mushroom lunch has offered killer chef Erin Patterson his forgiveness.
It comes after an emotional plea hearing in Victoria's Supreme Court. Let's go live to Today Melbourne reporter Christina Hearn. Chris, good morning to you. We also heard from the triple murderer's estranged husband.
Yeah, that's right, Carl. So Simon Patterson wasn't in court in person where he would have come face to face with his estranged wife, but he did have a victim impact statement read out on his behalf where he spoke about their children's suffering. He told the court the grim reality is they live in an irreparably broken home with only a solo parent, when almost everyone else knows their mother murdered their grandparents. The fact these foreseeable hurdles were actively put in front of them by their own mother is an impact we will wrestle with for the rest of our lives. The sole survivor of that deadly mushroom lunch, Pastor Ian Wilkinson, did decide to turn up here to the Supreme Court in person to deliver his victim impact statement. He spoke about the pain of losing his wife of 44 years, Heather, breaking down in tears before offering the triple murderer his forgiveness, saying he bears Erin Patterson no ill will. She'll be sentenced September 8th. Carl.
Chris, thank you.
Well, Erin Patterson is facing the possibility of life in prison with no chance of parole. That's the sentence prosecutors believe the triple murderer should be handed, with Justice Beale set to reveal her fate on September the 8th. Criminal psychologist Tim Watson-Munro joins us live now from Melbourne. Tim, good morning to you. So the sole survivor of the lunch, Ian Wilkinson, was among those who delivered victim impact statements in court. It was deeply moving, and remarkably, he offered Erin Patterson forgiveness over the murder of his beloved wife, Heather. It was incredible to see.
Well, who couldn't be moved by the grace and dignity of Ian Wilkinson? He's a bloke who not only talks the talk, but walks the walk as far as his faith concerned. And I was just very moved myself hearing that.
Absolutely. I mean, her estranged husband, Simon Patterson, wasn't in court, but he did read a statement was read on his behalf, and it said that his children had been robbed of their grandparents and left without hope. Do you think these statements will in any way impact Justice Beale's decision?
I wouldn't want to telegraph His Honour's decision, but in general terms, we're looking at a person who's been found guilty of murdering 3 people, the attempted murder of another. The Crown and the defence agree that a life sentence is in order here. The bone of contention is the Crown says life without parole. The defence says that some mitigation should be given her circumstances in prison. Based on decades of experience, whatever happens, it'll be a long time before she sees the light of day, in my view.
Yeah, we did hear a little bit more about her conditions while in prison. She herself looked withdrawn, somewhat dishevelled. She's being held in isolation for her own safety. What kind of a toll would that be having on Erin?
I've not examined her, but I've examined many people who have been in solitary confinement or limited association. Inevitably, it has a big toll psychologically. They're separated from the prison mainstream. I understand she'll be spending up to 22 hours a day in her cell, limited access to facilities, treatment and so on. And with the inflection of time, this will be very difficult for her to negotiate, given the penalty that she's looking at.
So sentencing is expected on September the 8th, and then we are likely to hear an appeal, most likely from Erin Patterson's team. How long do you think that process will be borne out?
oh, how long's a piece of string? I mean, this case has been going on forever and in the media forever. The sentencing occurs in about just under 2 weeks now. It's yet to be seen whether there will be an appeal against conviction and severity, but that could take some time. I think people would like some finality to this case, but it's hard to read.
Absolutely. So much heartbreak surrounding it. Thank you for your time this morning. A very good morning to you and thank you for your company this Monday. We begin with convicted mushroom murderer Erin Patterson, who will today return to court facing the loved ones of her murdered lunch guests.
The triple murderer will be transported from prison to court for a lengthy plea hearing. Let's go live to Today Melbourne reporter Christina Hearn outside Victoria's Supreme Court. Chris, good morning. We'll hear from the victims' families.
Yeah, that's right, Carl. And the prosecution has already indicated there will be a lot of victim impact statements read out over this 2-day plea hearing. Now, the victims can either read out the impact statements in person themselves here in court, or they can choose to have the prosecutor do that for them. This is their opportunity to actually tell the judge just how much these murders have impacted their lives. We are not expecting Erin Patterson's estranged husband Simon to attend court in person. However, he can choose to have a victim impact statement read out on his behalf. As for the triple murderer, well, she has been locked up in the maximum security Dame Phyllis Frost Centre since last month. That's since she was found guilty of murdering 3 of her relatives and attempting to murder a 4th after serving them a beef Wellington dish at her home laced with death cap mushrooms. She today will be transported via prison van here to the Supreme Court, of course, under heavy security. Her defence is expected to argue for a non-parole period or minimum sentence, arguing mitigating factors. As for the judge, he will set a date for sentencing after this 2-day plea hearing. Carl and Sarah.
Chris, thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Well, Erin Patterson is set to be confronted in court today by the loved ones of her victims, who will have the chance to face the convicted killer for the first time. For more, we are joined by President of the Victorian Bar, Justin Hanbury, in Melbourne. Good morning to you, Justin. So Erin's estranged husband, Simon Patterson, is not expected to appear, but who are we likely to hear from?
Well, Sarah, victim impact statements are open to anyone who has suffered as loss as a result of the crime, and in a situation where there are multiple deaths, as in this case, you might expect there are many people who would fall into that category. The precise people is going to be a matter for the court to deal with today, and as will whether those people give their victim impact statements in person or whether they get the prosecutor to read them out, or, as is commonly the case, they are simply written down and then tendered to the court and form part of the evidence before the judge in that way.
No, absolutely, and that might indeed be the way that Simon hands his impact statement in. It is going to be an emotional few days, right? We know that, these next 2 days of these statements being heard. It's taken such a huge toll on the community, let alone the loved ones. How do you think, Justin, this will factor in when it comes to the judge making his decision?
Well, the victim impact statements serve 2 purposes, really. First is that it does serve that important purpose of letting the court know exactly how the crime has impacted upon these people. It's direct evidence of that. It's evidence that the court is entitled to take into account when assessing the gravity of the offence. On the other side, though, I think it's a process that was introduced into our system, not simply for the information gathering of it, but also to give people in the situation of these victims the opportunity to feel like they've been heard, that they've had their opportunity to express their sense of loss in a situation where, by definition, the trial process will simply focus on the guilt or innocence of the accused and necessarily exclude a lot of these people from that process. And I think the victim impact process has been a circumstance that's been introduced to address what was perceived to be a need to have people feel like they've been heard.
Yeah, there'll be a bit for the judge to get through, that's for sure. We understand that Erin Patterson's defence will argue mitigating factors should be considered in the sentencing. What do you expect that to include?
Well, in every case, when the prosecution get an opportunity to argue before the court, and they'll be able to submit what they say are aggravating features of the offences that the judge would have to take into account. And similarly, the defence get equally an opportunity to put what are called mitigating features. Now, in every case, that can vary. In some cases, that can involve, for example, evidence of prior good character. In other cases, it might involve medical conditions or psychological conditions that might impact on either the culpability for the offence or the onerous nature of prison as it might apply to one particular individual. But it varies from case to case.
And we know that Erin Patterson is likely to appeal her convictions once that sentence is handed down, and that might come in a few weeks' time. Justin, thank you for joining us this morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Sarah.
As we come back to you, we're going to return to our lead story on Erin Patterson's guilty verdict over the triple mushroom murders. Let's go live to 9's Mimi Becker at the maximum security prison where Erin is being taken. Mimi, Patterson is on the move.
She is, Pete. Erin Patterson left Morwell Police Station around an hour ago, and she is expected to arrive here at the maximum security prison at 7:30 tonight. Now, Patterson is very familiar with these facilities. She has been behind bars since November 2023. But tonight we can reveal in 9 News that Erin Patterson has been a cook at this prison, and she also has been accused of tampering with other prisoners' food. While an investigation took place here at the prison, Erin Patterson was put in solitary confinement, but no further action has been taken. As I say, she is familiar with this prison, but tonight security guards will be keeping an extra close eye on her as she spends her first night behind bars as a convicted killer. Pete?
Mimi, thank you.
An investigation has been launched into how jurors in the mushroom murder trial ended up staying at the same hotel as lawyers, police and journalists.
Court reporter Amber Johnston joins us live. Amber, the revelations could end up forming part of convicted murderer Erin Patterson's appeal.
They could, Tom, but it's still a bit of a mystery at this stage. I spoke to Erin Patterson's defence team a short time ago, and they said it wouldn't be appropriate to comment on the situation while the triple murderer is waiting to be sentenced here at the Supreme Court in Victoria. So there is still a huge big question mark over that appeal. But all of this started given the high-profile nature of the case. As you can imagine, Court Services Victoria wanted to protect the integrity of the trial. So as soon as those jury members were sent away to begin their deliberations, they ended up being sequestered and put up in hotel accommodation. But the problem is there isn't a whole lot of accommodation in Morwell where the trial was held. So it led to this really awkward situation where a number of prosecutors, detectives and members of the media were also staying at that same hotel, including the lead informant in the case. So there were a few awkward moments in the hotel reception, but 9 News understands everyone involved took this very seriously and did everything they could to ensure there weren't any inappropriate interactions, with some journalists literally hiding in hallways and asking to switch hotel rooms just to avoid bumping into jurors. But because the case is still in the public eye, Victoria's Juries Commission is investigating, but it's important to note that there is nothing to suggest that anyone did anything wrong in this situation.
All right, Amber, thank you.
Good afternoon. A shock decision from the Reserve Bank today. The board leaving the cash rate on hold at 3.85%, despite our top economists betting on a cut. Here's finance editor Chris Kohler.
Well, a surprise delivered today by the Reserve Bank in place of the interest rate cut that the market and economists were expecting. The official cash rate remaining at 3.85%. We were expecting the interest rates to come down. We've been told for some time now to expect that backup interest rate cut following on from last meeting. This would have been the third interest rate cut of the year so far, and economists were talking about not just this one, but multiple to come in the future.
The Reserve Bank said it wanted to be cautious, but in the end, they're not going to learn anything over the next 5 weeks that would change their minds about cutting rates. So you may as well just get on with it.
This is not the outcome that millions of Australians were hoping for.
or the outcome that economists or the market was expecting.
Now, Australians were already banking on this rate cut. In some instances, we saw pretty strong bidding at auctions across the weekend. Auction clearance rates nationally were above 70%, showing a real sign that there was some hope that monetary policy was coming down to the neutral zones. Now, the reason this is surprising the market is the inflation rate has come down to well and truly inside the Reserve Bank's 2 to 3% target band. National economic growth has also showed signs of slowing. On the other side of things, the unemployment rate does remain low. So there's a little bit of caution here, it seems, from the Reserve Bank and Michelle Bullock, and perhaps the idea that they need to wait for those all-important quarterly inflation numbers before they can be certain that another interest rate cut is needed. Now, very quickly, economists have turned their attention to the next meeting in August. The idea is that we will still see interest rate cuts then, because simply we can't sustain high interest rates at the current level. So attention very quickly turning towards that decision. We have heard from Michelle Bullock this afternoon. Here's what she said.
By our next meeting in 5 weeks, we will have the June quarter CPI, another labour market reading, further information about international developments and an updated set of forecasts. So the board decided to wait a few weeks to confirm that we're still on track to meet our inflation and employment objectives. We are on a path towards easing further.
We'll have full details in the news at 6.
The doctor who first raised the alarm over Erin Patterson has spoken out a day after the mother of two was convicted as a triple murderer. Live now to Amber Johnston in Morwell in Victoria. Amber, what has he said?
Mark, a fascinating insight from Dr. Chris Webster. So as you just mentioned, he was the first medical professional to speak with Erin Patterson when she presented to hospital after that mushroom lunch, claiming to have gastro-like symptoms. So now that we know that she's a convicted triple murderer, it's given him the green light to finally tell his side of the story, which he did today. He said something just didn't seem right with her when she presented to hospital, and he noticed a couple of red flags. He said it was quite strange because Heather and Ian were also in hospital, but he said Erin Patterson didn't look at them once as soon as she arrived, and he was actually the one who ended up sounding the alarm and called 000 when she discharged herself from hospital against medical advice, because he was really concerned about the situation. So take a listen. This is more of what he had to say.
So when she didn't respond in a way that instantly would have explained it as a tragic accident, yeah, that's it. From that moment, in my mind, she was guilty, she was evil, and very smart to have planned it all and carry it out, but didn't quite dot every I and cross every T.
Very strong words from Dr. Chris Webster. And the next time he came face to face with Erin Patterson was actually here at court when he was called to give evidence as a prosecution witness. He said it was a huge moment for him in the courtroom. He wasn't sure how she was going to react, but he said as soon as he locked eyes with her again, it was an intense gaze. And he said he felt a lot of negativity and hostility from Erin Patterson. So that was a huge moment from him in the courtroom. And we'll have more on this in our bulletins at 6. Mark?
Amber, thank you. A young family has narrowly escaped injury after their Kellyville home was targeted by gunfire. Madison Scott has the details.
Inside this Kellyville home was a couple and a 3-year-old girl. Police are labelling this as a targeted attack and believe the 36-year-old male victim may have links to organised crime. He was the one who initially heard noises on the front lawn around 3 this morning. When he came to his front door, he was confronted by a pair of men. Police say there was then an argument before around 7 shots were fired towards him and into the Janamba Avenue home. The 36-year-old ducked for cover and luckily no one was injured. The family only moved in around a week ago.
3 a.m, one would think they're sleeping. Fortunately, no one was injured.
The group then drove off and are believed to have deliberately set the Toyota hatchback involved in the shooting alight just 5 minutes away on Gorman Avenue. CCTV there also shows them running off through a park, so there is likely to be a second getaway car involved, and police are looking for 3 to 4 people.
Their actions are reckless. Like, they have no regard for the community, they have no regard for the occupants of that house and more broadly the street and the suburb. And they have no regard for themselves because the police will now put everything they have into this investigation.
Police are looking into whether or not this shooting and one that happened just 2 weeks ago in North Kellyville are related.
Federal opposition leader Susan Lee has called on the Prime Minister to form an anti-Semitism action plan. That's after touring the East Melbourne synagogue that was torched last Friday, describing the attack as un-Australian.
It is not the Australia that we support, live in and want to belong to.
It comes as other MPs campaign for Anthony Albanese to call a special National Cabinet meeting to discuss the rise of anti-Semitism. US President Donald Trump's tariffs have changed again. Taxes that were supposed to begin tomorrow, now delayed by several weeks. Here's political editor Charles Croucher.
Well, the first letters from the White House have been sent to 14 nations around the world. Australia is not one, but Korea and Japan are. They'll both attract 25% tariffs. That's more than Australia's 10%. And in this weird new world of trade, it's advantageous to our beef producers as they compete at times with Japanese beef in the US. Still, the Prime Minister insists he'll argue for tariffs to be removed entirely, but just won't do a deal giving up leverage for a free trade when we already have a free trade agreement. The White House says the President's phone is ringing off the hook.
I would say final, but if they call with a different offer and if I like it, we'll do it.
He is literally looking at the map and looking at every country on the planet and seeing where they are ripping off the American people.
Tariffs are a penalty on the country that is imposing them. Australia has a tariff rate of 10%, which is at least as low as any country in the world.
Those tariffs are separate to the excess that's being put on Australian aluminium and steel. On that topic, Australia is open to a deal likely to involve critical minerals.
Well, 9 News has been told accused mushroom killer Erin Patterson entertained a group of people at her Leongatha home the night before she was arrested and charged. Neighbours have made the claim, saying the community is still struggling to come to terms with the loss of the 3 admired members. Crime reporter Gillian Lantouris.
Filing in for their usual Sunday service, there was an air of sadness, with the notable absences of lost friends still being felt by the Corumburra community.
Everybody has been deeply affected by it.
Reverend Ian Wilkinson, the sole survivor of the alleged toxic mushroom lunch, still not well enough to lead his parishioners. Instead, he's been replaced temporarily by another pastor.
As upsetting and as distressing as what's happened.
Neighbours have revealed Miss Patterson had guests over here at her Leongatha home the night before it was raided by police. That would be her last night as a free woman before her arrest. They say several people attended the function that lasted a few hours. The next day, Erin Patterson was charged with murdering her former in-laws, Don and Gail Patterson, along with Heather Wilkinson, by serving them a deadly meal containing poisonous mushrooms in July. She's also charged with attempting to murder Mr. Wilkinson, who was at the lunch but recovered, and of plotting to kill her estranged husband, Simon, on 4 separate occasions. He hasn't been seen since the charges were laid, shying away from the tight-knit community and absent from today's church service.
My heart goes out to the entire family because I've been very upset, but I couldn't imagine what it'd be like to be their family.
The arrest has sparked more grief for the Corumburra community.
Thankfully, because of the nature of the people of this town, they are being supported.
The 49-year-old mother of 2 will remain at the maximum security Dame Phyllis Frost Centre until her next court appearance in May. Gillian Lantouris, 9 News.
Ian Wilkinson, the sole survivor of the deadly mushroom lunch, has spoken for the first time since triple murderer Erin Patterson was found guilty. The pastor spoke directly to his congregation at the Corumburra Baptist Church, offering a message of hope. Eliza Rugg has the story.
Heading into the Currumborough Baptist Church, Pastor Ian Wilkinson was met with a round of applause after telling his congregation, "My name is Ian. I used to lead services here a lot, and I'm pleased to be back with you again." This was Ian's first time returning to his role as church leader since Erin Patterson was found guilty of murdering his wife, Heather Wilkinson, along with Heather's sister, Gail Patterson, and Gail's husband, Don, the parents of Erin's ex-husband, Simon Patterson. Members of the congregation today led special prayers for the Wilkinson and Patterson families, both torn apart by the actions of Erin, who poisoned her lunch guests with death cap mushrooms. Ian Wilkinson stoically showed up throughout the trial, including giving evidence about the deadly lunch that horrified the world. The pastor today instead choosing the theme of hope. "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." Pastor Ian Wilkinson's involvement in the mushroom murder saga is not yet over. He will be invited to make what's called a victim impact statement at Erin Patterson's pre-sentence hearing, expected to be heard sometime in the coming months. There, he may detail how he managed his miraculous recovery after ingesting death cap mushrooms. More difficult, perhaps, will be having to talk about who he lost, including the woman who used to be by his side for Sunday service. Eliza Rugg, 9 News.
Legal experts say mushroom murderer Erin Patterson is likely to appeal her sentence for killing 3 members of her family. Lana Murphy tells us security camera footage unseen by the jury has now come to light, documenting her movements in the minutes after the deadly lunch.
The writing is on the wall. From Morwell to Melbourne, it's impossible to escape the face of Erin Patterson.
The middle-aged woman who, for no reason apparently, out of the blue, schemes and plans and plots to kill her family.
The mother turned mass murderer is facing life in prison, and legal experts say her team is likely preparing her appeal.
The reality is that she's run a trial, she's pleaded not guilty, she's maintained her innocence, the jury have found her guilty. Clearly there's going to be a real effort to try and find some sort of an appeal ground.
Patterson was found guilty of 3 counts of murder and 1 of attempted murder. While no sentencing date has been set, it could be as early as August. From there, she has 28 days to lodge an appeal, and this can be done on 2 grounds: that there was a miscarriage of justice, a legal error, or that the verdict is unsafe and unsatisfactory. That win would lead to an acquittal, unless there was fresh evidence.
That's a difficult task. The appellate courts are really reticent. They don't like making that sort of ruling.
Today, vision never seen by the jury has emerged, showing the 50-year-old just half an hour after her guests left the deadly lunch. She dumped cardboard boxes and a garbage bag at the tip, and days later returned to discard the food dehydrator used to dry the death cap mushrooms. Prison sources have told 9 News Patterson is still being kept away from the general population here at the Dame Phyllis Frost Centre. That is partly because she's been accused of trying to poison other inmates with contaminated eggs. A Nagi Mehashi recipe inspired Patterson's beef Wellington. The cook has now broken her silence. It is, of course, upsetting to learn that one of my recipes, possibly the one I've spent more hours perfecting than any other, something I created to bring joy and happiness, is entangled in a tragic situation. Lana Murphy, 9 News.
I have no hesitation in finding that your offending falls into the worst category for the offences of murder and attempted murder. For the attempted murder of Ian Wilkinson, I sentence you to 25 years imprisonment. For the murder of Heather Wilkinson, I sentence you to life imprisonment. For the murder of Gail Patterson, I sentence you to life imprisonment. For the murder of Don Patterson, I sentence you to life imprisonment. All sentences are to be served concurrently. The total effective sentence is life imprisonment, and I fix a non-parole period of 33 years.
Fresh details have been released on triple murderer Erin Patterson, including allegations she tried to poison her ex-husband on 3 occasions. Let's go live to Today Melbourne reporter Kiara Parker. Kiara, these are some details that the jury didn't hear.
Yeah, that was part of the bombshell evidence that was kept secret from the jury, aired during pre-trial proceedings, but thrown out after days of legal arguments, including the alleged poisonings of her ex-husband, Simon Patterson, on 3 separate occasions across 2021 and 2022, a year before the lethal lunch. He was so ill he ended up in hospital, but his gut illnesses weren't consistent with death cap mushroom poisonings. The prosecution ended up dropping those attempted murder charges on the eve of the trial. The jury also didn't know about a cat post Erin Patterson made on Facebook, where she said her cat had eaten a mushroom and vomited, but it's understood she never owned a cat, and it's claimed she was fishing for information about how poisonous the mushrooms were. The jury also didn't know that she made a second trip to the tip. We know she disposed of her dehydrator afterwards, but it's now been revealed on the day of the lethal lunch, not long after her guests had left, she went to the tip. There's security vision of her there, but it's not known at that time exactly what was thrown out, so it was ruled inadmissible. A week after the lunch at her Leongatha home, where she served those beef Wellingtons to her relatives, she was interviewed by police where she lied about foraging. Video of that interview has now been released. Take a look.
Something you've done in the past, foraging for mushrooms or anything like that? Have you ever dehydrated food or anything like that?
After that mammoth trial in Morwell, the 50-year-old mother of 2 is yet to be sentenced after being found guilty of 3 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder. Lizzie?
Cara Parker there in Melbourne.
And it's a trial that certainly captured the attention of Australia and the world. Mother of 2, Erin Patterson, found guilty of triple murder and 1 attempted murder after a family lunch in 2023.
Yeah, a month after the verdict and the bombshells keep coming. New allegations into the case have emerged after the Supreme Court lifted its suppression order. And for more, we are joined by criminologist from Central Queensland University, Dr. Xanthi Mallett. Xanthi, good to see you. Some of these allegations, extraordinary. It's alleged she tried to kill her ex-husband at least 3 times before.
Absolutely. Good morning. Yes, over a protracted period of time in 2020 and 2021, over a year before the fateful lunch, Simon has claimed that he was fearful that he was attempted to be murdered a number of times via poisoning.
Why was this info withheld from the jury?
Well, the alleged attempted murders on Simon Patterson were separated into a separate trial, and they were going to run after the murder trial. But they were actually dropped on the eve before the trial began for the murders. And so if the jury had heard about those, the judge felt that it would be potentially prejudicial against her and ultimately unfair.
I'm sure the jury would be taking it in today, thinking, wow, we did come to the right verdict. Xanthi, she also went to the tip on the day of the lunch itself.
She did, but we don't know actually what she disposed of at the tip. Around 45 minutes after her guest left, she was on video, caught on video at the tip, disposing of at least some cardboard, but we don't know what other evidence. So that was also suppressed because we could potentially assume something, suspicious was dumped at the tip that day, but we just don't know, and the police couldn't demonstrate what it was, so that was also withheld.
Also interesting to note the jury wasn't allowed to know that she was in custody during the trial. Again, why was that?
Yeah. Yes, well, the jury were not allowed to know anything that made it look like she was guilty. So if she turned up in a prison van every morning for the trial, that would have given them the impression that she was guilty. So the court was very sure to protect her from that, to make sure she had a fair trial.
Xanthi, sentencing will happen for Erin Patterson at the end of the month. Are we likely to see any more information emerge about this case?
I think we are. Simon Patterson has already said that he wants to share his story, be that in a book or documentary. We don't know yet. Maybe a big interview that he'll do, because he wants to say what happened from his perspective. So I imagine there's still going to be a lot more information to come in this case.
Xanthi, I feel like it's still captivating the country. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Now we know that Erin Patterson is a triple murderer, we can finally reveal where she was kept throughout the course of the trial. So normally an accused person will be kept at a remand centre or prison, but in this instance, because we're here in Morwell, she was kept over here at the Morwell police station, which is right next to the court. So it's the grey building behind me here. So she was kept inside the cells, and at the very beginning of the trial, her defence barrister raised concerns about the conditions inside. He said she wasn't afforded basic basic things such as a doona and a pillow, as well as writing tools, and he said it really was quite horrendous in there. But this was the most interesting part. So in order to get inside that courtroom every day, she was actually transported in an underground tunnel which is beneath our feet right now. So she'd be taken from her cells, walk through that underground tunnel, taken into court and up to courtroom 4, which is on that second level there. So that's where the trial was held. But in terms of what Erin Patterson's life is going to look like now, it's going to be pretty grim. So she was bundled into that prison van and taken to the Dame Phyllis Frost Centre, which is where she will stay until her next court date in August.